Chapter 316. Xiaoyu took a step forward and supported Xiaomeng's body. His face immediately darkened. With a clanging sound, the long sword on his back was unsheathed. The sword flashed like a meteor that was about to tear through the sky. It hovered above his head with the tip of the sword pointed at Elder Sunday. "You want to fight with me?" The muscles all over Elder Sun's body bulged as true energy gushed out with a loud bang. Raising his hand, a frightening pressure burst forth and pressed down on Xiaoyu. "Elder Sun, please stay your hand." Zhang Kong, who had been silent all this while, stepped forward and stood in front of Xiaoyu. He raised his finger and immediately broke apart the pressure of true energy that Elder Sun had gathered. Xiaoyu's face was cold as he sheathed his longsword. He did not have the slightest favorable impression of Elder Sunday. Zhang Kong was the commander of the White Cloud Villa. Elder Sun did not want to offend him. He retracted his pressure and snorted inwardly. "What are you looking at? Hurry up and tell Bufong to hand over the item." Elder Sun shouted as he glared at the ministers. The ministers immediately stiffened and hurriedly ran toward the bottom of the city wall. "Stop right there. Who dares to go?" Ji Qingxue angrily shouted. "Your Majesty." Elder Sun also shouted as he glared at Ji Qingxue. The minister hesitated for a moment. Seeing that Ji Qingxue did not say anything else, he turned around and left the city wall. They descended the city wall, gathered a large group of soldiers, and majestically rushed toward Fong Fong's little store. Ji Qingxue's complexion was ashen from anger, but he was helpless. The blood guards below the city wall sneered when they saw Ji Qingxue and the others causing a ruckus. Ji Qingyu, on the other hand, was expressionless as he watched the scene unfold. Fong Fong's little store, an alleyway in the imperial city. Bufong was curled up on a chair with his eyes slightly narrowed. The warm sunlight shone on his body, giving off a warm feeling. He was somewhat intoxicated by this feeling. Blackie was snoring at the entrance of the store. Ouyang Xiaoyi was sitting beside the path-understanding tree, wholeheartedly cultivating. The sound of Xiao Xiaolong practicing cooking rang out from a kitchen. Everything seemed so peaceful and peaceful. Suddenly, a series of messy and hurried footsteps rang out in the alley, waking up Bufong, who was in a light sleep. Bufong opened his eyes and looked expressionlessly at the group of imperial ministers who were jogging towards him. There were many soldiers around the ministers. This group of people gathered in front of Bufong's restaurant. The ministers looked at Bufong as if they were looking at a treasure. This gaze caused Bufong's entire body to involuntarily shiver, and his hair stood on end. What were these uncles trying to do? Why was his gaze so strange? Owner Bu, this group of ministers naturally knew about the background of Fong Fong's little store. Nowadays, everyone in the imperial city knew how terrifying Fong Fong's little store was. Naturally, no one dared to provoke it. Please come in for the meal," Bufong said lightly. "Owner Bu, today we are not here to eat. We are here to ask for your help," the minister said with a bitter smile. Bufong was taken aback. They were actually here to ask for his help? Could it be that they wanted to borrow money? No way, he had no money. Standing up from his chair, Bufong clasped his hands behind his back and silently walked into the store. At this moment, it was best to remain silent. "Owner Bu, don't go. We want to borrow something from you." The minister looked at Bufong, who was about to enter the store, and a trace of anxiety appeared in his eyes. Bufong's heart skipped a beat. As expected, this guy was really here to borrow money from him. Subconsciously, Bufong's footsteps became faster and faster. The ministers almost vomited blood. "Borrowing something from you. Why are you running? Can't you have a proper conversation? Owner Bu, do you have anything related to the Shura sect?" One of the ministers couldn't wait any longer and hurriedly asked. Bufong, who was halfway into the kitchen, suddenly stopped. "You want to borrow something related to the Shura sect from me?" Bufong squinted his eyes. Then, with a thought, the magic array formed by the 5 broken jade talismans appeared in his hand. He turned around and waved the magic array in his hand, saying, "Are you talking about this?" The ministers had almost given up hope. They didn't expect that Bufong would actually respond to them. After they got over their initial shock, they cursed Bufong in their hearts. Did this guy really think they were here to borrow money? That's right, that's right. I wonder if Owner Boo is willing to lend it to us. One of the minister's eyes lit up. Owner Boo really had something related to the Shura sect. Why were they looking for this trash with such great fanfare? The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. He casually tossed the magic array into the air above his palm. Then, Bu Fong put it into the system's dimensional storage. No, Bu Fong replied expressionlessly. Huffed. The ministers wanted to cry. They thought that Owner Boo was going to throw the magic array over. They were ready to catch it, but in the end, it was put away by Bu Fong. Why should I lend it to you? This concerns the survival of the Light Wind Empire, the minister hurriedly said. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. A magic array formed by these 5 broken jade talismans was actually related to the survival of the Light Wind Empire? Was this broken thing worth so much? With a thought, Bu Fong took out the magic array and observed it in surprise. After observing it, he put it away again. There was nothing special about it. The blood guards outside the city gate were so depressed that they almost vomited blood. Their jade plate could sense the traces of the Soul Congregation array, but what was the meaning of the blinking dots on the jade plate? He wanted to rush into the Imperial City, rush into the alleyway, and take back the Soul Congregation array. The ministers were very depressed. They hurriedly told Bu Fong everything that happened on the city wall, hoping to move Bu Fong and make him hand over the Shura sex item. Why should I hand over this jade talisman formation? Go back and tell the blood guards. If they have the ability, come and take it from my store, Bu Fong said calmly. Then, he sent the ministers away. Owner Bu, if you hand over the magic array, you will be able to buy the Light Wind Empire Day of Negotiation. This is extremely important to the Light Wind Empire. One of the ministers said reluctantly, Why should I hand over something that I obtained with my own strength? Bu Fong asked. Then, he ignored them and went back into the kitchen. The ministers' faces were gloomy, but they had no other choice. They didn't dare to cause trouble in the store. After all, the store was notorious. If you do this, you will put the people of the Imperial City in deep trouble. One of the ministers was still unwilling and continued to shout toward the kitchen. Don't use the people to pressure me. Scram! An indifferent roar rang out from the kitchen, startling the group of ministers. After sensing for a long time, they realized that the clothes-stripping demon and the supreme beast hadn't appeared. Only then did they heave a long sigh of relief. Then they left dejectedly, facing the stubborn and smelly Owner Boo, whose temper was like a stone in a latrine pit. They were really at their wits' end. The group of ministers returned to the city wall. The atmosphere on the city wall was as heavy as ever. How is it? Did you get the item? Elder Son asked coldly. No, Owner Boo told us to scram. The minister was frightened by Elder Son's imposing aura, causing him to tremble. The blood guards at the foot of the city wall couldn't hold it in any longer. Their eyes were bloodshot. So what you're saying is that the boss really has what we're looking for. Very good. The 2 blood guards looked at each other and saw the impatience in each other's eyes. They gathered their true energy and were about to rush into the Imperial City. However, just as they gathered their true energy, a loud and clear cry came from the sky. A huge, intense sunbird spread its wings and flew over. Waves of heat rolled around it. On the back of the intense sunbird sat a chubby old man. The old man had an amiable expression on his face. He held an ice cube with a wooden handle in his hand and chewed on it in satisfaction. The ardent sunbird let out a cry, then landed on the city wall. On the city wall, the experts of the 100,000 Mountains Clear Sky Pagoda were delighted. They bowed and shouted, Greetings, great elder Yi Yunqing. Chapter 317. The ardent sunbird had a fire attribute. It was a powerful spirit beast that lived in the 100,000 mountains and was extremely rare. Every ardent sunbird was extremely powerful because it was an 8th grade spirit beast. When it spat out flames, even a 7th grade warrior would be burned to ashes. There were only 2 such ardent sunbirds in the 100,000 mountains, and each of them was extremely precious. No one would have thought that one of the ardent sunbirds would actually land here today. Moreover, on the back of the ardent sunbird sat a chubby old man. This old man was dressed in an unrestrained manner, and his white hair was disheveled in the wind. However, this was not the main reason why he attracted everyone's attention. The chubby old man attracted everyone's attention mainly because he was holding a lump of ice in his hand and eating it nonstop, riding an ardent sunbird and eating a lump of ice. How could he have such fun? Yi Yunqing, the chubby elder, was the great elder of the Clear Sky Pagoda in the 100,000 Mountains. His cultivation was unfathomable. As soon as he appeared, a terrifying aura emanated from him, suppressing the two restless blood guards into calming them down. Delicious. It's a pity that after slaughtering so many 8th grade flood dragons and extracting so many dragon livers, I only managed to get this one. This old man's culinary skills are still lacking compared to Onarbu's. The chubby old man looked at the lump of ice in his hand and couldn't help but sigh. He shook his head and then stuffed the lump of ice into his mouth. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the chubby old man's expression changed dozens of times. Even the experts of the Clear Sky Pagoda were dumbfounded. It turned out that their great elder could make so many unprecedented expressions. Slurp. The chubby old man bit down, and a stream of black juice spilled out from the ice lump, drawing a beautiful arc. The chubby old man's eyes widened, and he hurriedly stretched out his hand to protect the juice. This was his 8 spirit fruit vinegar, the precious 8 spirit fruit vinegar. He accidentally spilled it out. As the chubby old man chewed, a sour and refreshing feeling spread throughout his body. He couldn't help but scrunch up his face and tremble all over. After swallowing the lump of ice in his mouth, the chubby old man stretched his neck and burped. I put too much vinegar. The chubby old man tugged at his beard in annoyance and said regretfully, how precious was the 8 spirit fruit vinegar? He actually put too much of it. The people on the city wall were dumbfounded, and the people below the city wall were speechless. This old man, is he here to make a joke? The chubby old man let out a long breath, which was accompanied by a sour smell. Everyone on the city wall looked embarrassed, especially the experts from the Clear Sky Pagoda. The great elder didn't have any other strong points, but he loved to eat. Yo, sure as sec blood guards. What are they doing? The chubby old man sat cross-legged on the back of the intense sunbird, his gaze fixed on the 2 blood guards below as he asked. The moment the elderly man's gaze landed on them, the 2 blood guards felt their bodies tense up as a tremendous pressure suddenly erupted. Although the blood guards were at the peak of half-step Supreme Being, in reality, they were no different from Supreme Being experts. Even though the 2 blood guards sensed a terrifying Supreme Being aura coming from the old man, they did not cower in the slightest. They were the blood guards and also the Azura's Gate's death warriors. I heard that you want us to hand over Onarbu. Do you know how important Onarbu is? What an excellent chef he is. How many people would be intoxicated by his dishes? How could we hand over Onarbu to you, a bunch of demons? The chubby old man was suddenly agitated. He stood up from the back of the intense sunbird and waved his hands and feet. The intense sunbird's slender neck twisted, as if it was disdainful. The 2 blood guards' faces froze. They were too lazy to talk nonsense with the old man. Both of them shouted loudly as their hair fluttered in the wind. The aura on their bodies was like a monstrous sea of blood. Blood-colored, true energy shot up to the sky. Boom, boom. The ground beneath them shook as the 2 of them shot up. Blood-colored light encircled their bodies, turning into blood-colored dragons that swam around their bodies. The chubby old man snorted and lightly tapped the back of the intense sunbird with the tip of his foot. His chubby body floated up like a falling leaf. Like a golden rooster standing on one leg, he soared into the sky. Surging true energy erupted, turning into a blazing bird spreading its wings behind his back. The cries of the blazing bird resounded through the sky. The roars of the 2 blood flood dragons were also deafening. Boom! The 3 of them bombarded each other in the void. Waves of genuine chi at the level of the 9th grade spread out like ripples in the sky. The oppressive atmosphere made the hearts of the people below sink. The chubby old man was, after all, a ninth-grade supreme being. Even though the two blood guards were comparable to supreme beings, they were not true supreme beings. After a single blow, the difference in strength was obvious. Two blood-colored figures descended from the sky. Their auras were a little weak as they landed on the ground. They raised their heads to look at the sky with solemn expressions. The chubby old man supported his waist with one hand and stroked his beard with the other. He snorted coldly. His infuriating look made the blood of the two blood guards boil. They wanted nothing more than to charge forward and tear this old man into pieces. Buzz, however, just as they were about to make their move, a slight ripple came from behind them. The two blood guards immediately stopped their movements. Their faces lit up with joy as they looked behind them. A warrior wrapped in a black robe slowly walked out from Ji Qingyu's army. He walked very slowly. Every step he took brought along a whistling gale. As he continued to walk, the old man actually stepped into the air. His robe fluttered as he walked toward the chubby old man. "Do you think my Shura sect has no one?" A faint and old voice echoed on the city tower. Then, the black-robed old man smiled faintly as he faced the chubby old man in the air. Venerable Sir has made his move. This old man is dead for sure." The eyes of the two blood guards lit up with excitement. The Venerable Sir was a ninth-grade supreme being of their Shura sect. His cultivation was unparalleled. Dealing with this chubby old man who only knew how to eat was no problem at all. The chubby old man stared at the other old man with a solemn expression. The Shura sect Venerable was one of the giants of the Shura sect. His cultivation was unparalleled, and his methods were strange. He was extremely difficult to deal with. "You two, enter the city and capture that bouffon. That thing must be taken back." The Venerable Sir's voice reverberated and was transmitted to the ears of the two blood guards. The blood guards immediately focused their eyes and nodded solemnly. The soul congregation array was the key to completely awakening the departed soul orb. Every soul congregation array contained an enormous amount of soul essence. It was extremely important to the Shura sect, and they could not afford to lose it. The two blood guards immediately dashed toward the top of the city wall. "Stop right there." The chubby old man's eyes widened. He twisted his body and planned to rush toward the two blood guards. However, before he could make a move, a pitch-black and majestic true energy stream ruthlessly smashed towards him, sealing off his path forward. "Your opponent is me," the Venerable Sir said calmly with his hands clasped behind his back. The chubby old man took a deep breath. His true energy surged, and he began fighting with the Venerable Sir in the sky. Blood-colored true energy surged from the two blood guards. In an instant, they turned into two beams of crimson light and dashed toward the top of the city wall. Many people's expressions changed drastically. Zhang Kong's face froze. He stood in front of the two blood guards and displayed the sword art of the White Cloud Villa. Suddenly, a fierce sword energy gushed out from behind him and slashed toward the two blood guards. "Get lost," one of the blood guards said in a hoarse voice. With a wave of his hand, blood-colored true energy swept out and shattered Zhang Kong's sword energy inch by inch. Zhang Kong's face reddened, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body was sent flying backward and slammed heavily onto the city wall. They were both 8th-grade war gods, but the gap between their cultivation levels was enormous. Zhang Kong's face instantly turned ashen. The blood guards stomped on the city wall. The ancient city wall crumbled under the force of their stomps and was covered in cracks. However, Zhang Kong was severely injured with just one move. Who else could stop them other than a supreme being? The experts on the city wall did not even dare to breathe loudly. They watched in fear as the two figures dashed down and fell into the city. With a single thought, they locked onto the location where the Soul Congregation array appeared and dashed toward it. Ji Qingshue's face was unsightly. He looked worriedly in the direction where the blood guards disappeared. Even though Owner Bu had a supreme beast protecting him, These two blood guards were also ruthless people who could fight against a supreme being. Owner Bu could only pray for his own good. Chapter 3:18. Light Wind Empire's capital, City Gate. Above the vault of heaven, thunder rumbled. Terrifying waves of true energy constantly spread out. Even the clouds seemed to be scattered by the rumbling of true energy. Two silhouettes walked on the clouds, faintly discernible as they exchanged blows. The collision between the two was extremely violent, with energy bursting out. The crowd below raised their heads to watch the battle with fear on their faces. These were Supreme Being experts, existences at the Supreme Being level. King Yu, now is the time for us to attack the city. The battle above their heads continued, but Zhao Mushing no longer paid attention to it. Instead, he moved closer to Ji Qingyu and whispered. The arrival of the Supreme Being from the Clear Sky Pagoda made Zhao Mushing feel a sense of danger. If they waited until the Supreme Being experts from the other forces arrived, then it would be much more difficult for them to attack the city. Even though they also had a Supreme Being on their side, he was only one person and couldn't split himself into two. Once the Supreme Beings from the other forces arrived, under the protection of so many Supreme Beings, their chances of success would become minuscule. What Zhao Mushing thought, Ji Qingyu naturally thought as well. It was normal to have this kind of worry. However, Ji Qingyu still had another worry in mind. It was the two blood guards who entered the imperial city to cause trouble for Bufang. If Zhao Mushing wanted to attack the city, the two blood guards had to be able to capture Bufang. But would Bufang really be captured? After all, the store was guarded by a supreme beast. If the two blood guards were to fail, they would anger the supreme beast. At that time, the supreme beast would make a move, and the outcome of the battle would be hard to say. Forget it. Let's wait a little longer. If the blood guards successfully capture Bufang, then we will attack the city immediately. Ji Qingyu said resolutely and decisively. Zhao Mushing was stunned and didn't say anything. Ji Qingyu said this for insurance. Zhao Mushing suddenly realized that he was a little too optimistic. Even though the two blood guards were existences that could fight against a supreme being, two blood-colored figures rapidly shuttled through the alleys of the imperial city at an extremely fast speed. An afterimage shot past, stirring up a gust of wind as the two figures disappeared. As they approached the alleys of Fong Fong's little store, the two blood-colored figures finally stopped. These were the Azura's gate blood guards. One of the blood guards held his jade plate, and the light spots on the plate flickered violently. This is the store in this alley. The last time the Soul Congregation array disappeared was in this alley. One of the blood guards said in a hoarse voice. Then, the two of them looked at each other, nodded, and rushed toward the alleyway. As soon as they entered the alleyway, the two of them stopped. With their cultivation at the peak of the half-step Supreme Being realm, they could sense a terrifying sense of danger coming from the store. Jianpu's small shop was not very big. A big black dog was sleeping soundly in front of the door, and a figure was curled up on the chair. No matter how he looked at it, this store didn't seem dangerous at all. The blood guards furrowed their brows as a trace of doubt appeared in their eyes. Then, they walked toward the store. The black puppy, who was lying on the ground, wrinkled its nose. It opened its eyes and looked at the blood guard in confusion. This guy's body smells really bad. Blackish snorted, turned its head away in disgust, and went back to sleep. Bufang, who was curled up on the chair, was startled when he saw the two blood guards walking toward him. When Bufang saw the blood guards also saw him. The eyes of the two blood guards suddenly lit up, and a murderous aura appeared on their faces. Brat, hurry up and call the owner of your store out. One of the blood guards cautiously observed the surroundings. They didn't make a move immediately, as this store gave them a sense of danger. The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched, and his body, which was curled up on the chair, immediately sat up straight. He looked at them and said, I am the owner of this store. You? The blood guard's eyes widened. Then he sneered and took a step forward. As if the ground had shrunk to an inch, the blood guard appeared in front of Bufang in an instant. A terrifying aura erupted, and even his hair fluttered. The Bloodguard's face was almost touching Bufong's face. Bufong calmly looked at the Bloodguard. Then he furrowed his brows. The thick smell of blood on the Bloodguard's body made him feel disgusted. "Don't come so close. I'm not familiar with you." Bufong waved his hand and said, "Since you're the owner of this store, then you must have the surest sect soul congregation array on you. Am I right? Hand it over, and I will spare your life," the Bloodguard said coldly. Blood-colored true energy circulated on his palm. Buzz, just as he finished speaking, he felt a chill run down his spine. He raised his head and saw a red-eyed lump of iron staring at him. This lump of iron, soul congregation array? Bufong raised his eyebrows. He lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot. Then his entire body, along with the chair, rapidly retreated, distancing himself from the Bloodguard. He stood up from the chair, raised his hand, and with a thought, the array formed by the 5 broken jade talismans appeared in his hand. "You're talking about this, right?" Bufong expressionlessly said. "Soul congregation array." The moment Bufong took out the array, the eyes of the 2 Bloodguards lit up, and the jade plates in their hands glowed brightly. It was indeed on this person. They didn't find the wrong person. As long as they brought the Soul Congregation array back, they would be able to complete the High Priestess mission. The 2 Bloodguards' hearts burned with passion. "That's right. Quickly hand over the Soul Congregation array to me." Bang! One of the Bloodguards' aura suddenly surged. His eyes widened as he shouted at Bufong. Bufong curled his lips, casually tossed the jade talisman array into the air, then put it into the system's dimensional storage, incomparably calm. "No way. You're courting death." One of the hot-tempered Bloodguards was instantly enraged. His blood energy gushed out, and his entire body was shrouded in a blood-colored radiance. He dashed toward Bufong like a blood-colored lightning, intending to capture Bufong. Bang! However, just as the Bloodguard rushed into the store, he was intercepted by Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai's red mechanical eyes had unknowingly turned purple. The purple was extremely deep, causing the Bloodguard's hair to stand on end. Xiao Bai punched out, smashing into the Bloodguard's body. An enormous force that exceeded the Bloodguard's expectations exploded. The Bloodguard's figure was directly blown away, landing outside the store. He rolled a few times and stabilized his body. This puppet actually has the strength of a 9th grade. The 2 Bloodguards' eyes were filled with astonishment. They looked at each other, and their expressions became serious. However, so what if it had the strength of a 9th grade? With the 2 Bloodguards working together, they could even face off against a supreme being. Boom boom. True energy burst forth, and the blood energy on their bodies suddenly soared into the sky. Like 2 beams of light, they shot straight into the sky. The crowd on the city wall looked at the 2 beams of blood-colored light rising from within the city, and their bodies trembled. This Shura sect sorcerer, could it be that he has already started fighting with the supreme being Beast in Onorbu's store? Who will win and who will lose? The outcome of this battle will determine the outcome of this war. Many people couldn't help but murmur. Jiqingyu also fixed his gaze on the blood-colored light beam. Of course, he hoped that the Bloodguards would win, but he had a bad premonition in his heart. Bufong's expressionless face once again appeared in his mind, and his heart suddenly skipped a beat. Bufong indifferently looked at the 2 Bloodguards who exploded with blood-colored true energy. The cultivation of these 2 was really strong. That pressure was the strongest pressure that Bufong had ever felt. Xiao Bai's purple eyes flickered. One of his arms had already turned into a huge machete, and a cold light circulated around it. He swung the machete and pointed it at the 2 Bloodguards. In an instant, Xiao Bai's figure burst out, rushing into the middle of the 2 Bloodguards. Buzz! The 2 blood-colored flood dragons tumbled, and with terrifying fluctuations, they directly poured down on Xiao Bai. Boom, boom, boom. The entire alleyway collapsed in an instant, and the walls were destroyed. 3 figures were colliding at high speed. Every time they collided, a loud explosion would erupt. Xiao Bai didn't have true energy, but his mechanical body was incomparably hard, and he was invincible in close combat. The two blood guards relied on the blood-colored flood dragons to stall Xiaobai. After all, they were existences that could resist a ninth-grade supreme being. Xiaobai actually found it hard to win in such a short period of time. Blackish sprawled on the ground, yawning lazily. It didn't seem to mind. Bufang, on the other hand, walked to the door, watching the battle with twinkling eyes. His mind flickered, and black smoke curled around his right arm. Then a small wok expanded and floated in front of him. The black turtle constellation wok quietly floated in front of him. Bufang's slender fingers reached out, caressing the cold edge of the black turtle constellation wok. A heavy feeling lingered in Bufang's heart. Then Bufang's eyes focused. He single-handedly grabbed the black turtle constellation wok, took a deep breath, and fixed his eyes on the blood guards who were engaged in a fierce battle. Aim. 1, 2, 3, go! Chapter 319. The black turtle constellation wok was made from the shell of an ancient black tortoise. It was incomparably hard and weighed more than 10,000 pounds. Perhaps because Bufang was its owner, he couldn't feel the weight of the black turtle constellation wok at all. However, this didn't stop Bufang from using the wok to smash people. It was the first time Bufang saw Xiaobai being entangled by others. In the past, Xiaobai would always suppress his enemies with irresistible force and beat them up. However, today, in the hands of these two blood guards, Xiaobai was being entangled. The blood-colored flood dragon roared incessantly as it tumbled about. It really made one's scalp tingle. Every time Xiaobai slashed the blood flood dragon in half, more blood energy would condense and transform into a new blood flood dragon. Therefore, Bufang felt that he should do something to help Xiaobai. Bufang hadn't obtained the 10,000 bestial flames that the system mentioned. In his hands, the black turtle constellation wok was really just a wok. However, Bufang suddenly thought that this wok was really convenient to use to smash people. It weighed more than 10,000 pounds. If this wok smashed down, it would definitely make one cry for their grandmother. Bufang held the edge of the black turtle constellation wok. An ice-cold feeling instantly flowed through his palm and into his body. However, Bufang's heart was burning with passion. His body took a step back, and the black turtle constellation wok was also thrown behind him. He turned around and suddenly dashed out. Then the black turtle constellation wok left his hand. Go! Bufang calmly shouted. Then the black turtle constellation wok whizzed out. This black turtle constellation wok actually had a special effect. It could be enlarged or shrunk. However, this would consume the true energy in Bufang's body. This time, Bufang didn't transfer true energy into the wok like he did with the dragon bone kitchen knife. Otherwise, the black turtle constellation wok might change. The pitch-black turtle constellation wok swayed like a small boat in the vast sea. It swayed toward the huge waves that were rising to the sky. The momentum was not small. Naturally, the two blood guards also noticed it. One of the blood guards said in disdain. This was because he had seen through Bufang's cultivation level at first glance. This kid was merely a 6th-grade battle emperor. In the eyes of an expert like him, a 6th-grade battle emperor was no different from an ant. A single slap from him could kill a whole bunch of them. Therefore, he naturally did not take the attack of a 6th-grade battle emperor seriously. It was like an ant baring its fangs and claws at you, saying that it wanted to bite you. How would you react? At most, he would chuckle and slap them to death. The black wok that floated over was the same. They didn't take him seriously at all. Right now, their main target was still that incomparably formidable lump of metal. This lump of metal was truly formidable. Even if the two of them were to join forces, they would be able to shake even an utmost being. Yet, to think that they would still be at a disadvantage in the hands of this lump of metal. Bang bang. With two explosive sounds, the two blood flood dragons on the blood guard bodies were once again chopped off by Xiaobai's machete. Their blood energy scattered in all directions. The blood guards retreated several steps. Their eyes revealed a ruthless glint. The blood flood dragons condensed once again. They actually coiled around each other and charged toward Xiao Bai once again. A black walk swayed as it floated over at a slow speed. With the cultivation level of the Blood Guards, unless their speed surpassed the speed of sound, everything else was as slow as a snail in their eyes. A walk that crawled like a snail was smashing over. Was it here to give them a massage? The Blood Guards sneered disdainfully in their hearts. Within the store, Bu Fong swung his arm. Even though he was the owner of the Black Turtle Constellation Walk and couldn't feel the weight of the walk, it was still a big walk after all. The weight was not light. When Bu Fong swung it like that, he felt that his arm was a little stiff. After swinging his arm, Bu Fong's eyes lit up as he stared at the Black Turtle Constellation Walk. Get lost! The Black Turtle Constellation Walk floated for a few seconds before it finally floated to the side of one of the Blood Guards. The Blood Guard glanced at the walk and immediately snorted coldly. Without the slightest care, he threw out a wave of blood-colored energy, intending to smash the walk. It was just a walk. Was it going to fly to the heavens? From the Blood Guard's point of view, even an ordinary 7th-grade battle saint wouldn't be able to withstand his stream of energy, let alone a walk made by a 6th-grade battle emperor. The blood-colored energy shot out like a dragon and fiercely collided with the Black Turtle Constellation Walk in the air. There was no expected explosion, nor was the Black Turtle Constellation Walk sent flying. When the blood-colored energy hit the Black Turtle Constellation Walk, it was like an egg hitting a rock. With a pop, it scattered. The Black Turtle Constellation Walk didn't even shake and continued to fly. When the Black Turtle Constellation Walk's gale whistled over, the Blood Guard was finally startled. This walk, why is it still here? The Blood Guard's face stiffened as he exclaimed. You didn't smash the walk? Another Blood Guard asked in confusion. He was in the middle of a battle with a 9th-grade puppet. If he didn't smash the walk away, was he supposed to allow it to interfere? The expression of the first Blood Guard froze. Then, he let out a long breath. Blood-colored, true energy wrapped around his arm, and he swatted at the Black Turtle Constellation Walk. He didn't care about the Black Turtle Constellation Walk at all. As he swatted, his eyes were still focused on the iron lump puppet that had just landed on the ground and was once again charging at him with a monstrous roar. The Black Turtle Constellation Walk swayed back and forth. Finally, under the bright eyes of Bu Fong, the walk made intimate contact with the Blood Guard's palm. The Blood Guard's palm, which was wrapped with true energy, finally landed on the walk. His expression finally changed because he realized that his palm actually didn't move the walk in the slightest. It was as if his palm had landed on a towering mountain. Are you kidding me? You're just a walk. The heavy black walk didn't slow down at all. The Blood Guard's arm was instantly bent by the pressure. While he was still in a daze, he realized that the walk was heading toward him. The cold and heavy side of the pot suddenly pressed down on his arm, and under his incredulous gaze, it smashed onto his head. Damn it, bang, a crisp sound rang out, melodious and pleasing to the ear. The other Blood Guard's entire body trembled. He turned his head in astonishment and saw a scene that left him dumbstruck. The Blood Guard who was smashed by the walk was sent flying far into the air. He was dumbstruck. His eyes became empty and his mouth was slightly agape. His face was filled with confusion. The Blood Guard who was smashed by the Black Turtle Constellation Walk felt as if his entire world had turned gray. The world in front of him was flipped upside down and constantly changing. The sharp pain from his forehead caused the roots of his teeth to go numb. This walk really wanted to ascend to the heavens. With a bang, the Black Turtle Constellation Walk turned into black smoke and dissipated. It returned to Bu Fong's side. The Black Turtle Constellation Walk quietly floated in front of Bu Fong. Bu Fong happily touched the edge of the Black Walk. It was indeed worthy of being called the Black Turtle Constellation Walk that weighed more than 10,000 pounds. Even though it didn't smash the Blood Guard to death, it was still pretty good to stun him. Bu Fong felt a little regret in his heart. However, he soon felt relieved. After all, his current cultivation was only at the level of a 6th-grade battle emperor. To be able to stun someone who was half a step away from becoming a supreme being was already very impressive. Taking advantage of the fact that one of the blood guards was still in a daze, the purple glow in Xiao Bai's eyes suddenly intensified. With a loud bang, the bricks under Xiao Bai's feet were instantly shattered. A huge force erupted, and his body seemed to have transformed into a bolt of lightning. In an instant, he charged toward the stupefied blood guard. The other blood guard's expression immediately changed. "Wake up!" he hurriedly shouted, wanting to wake up the stupefied blood guard. With this shout, the blood guard finally woke up leisurely. The scene in front of him also gradually became clear. He was a little angry out of humiliation. His heart felt as uncomfortable as if he had eaten sh*t. He, a dignified supreme being at the peak of half a step away from becoming a supreme being, was actually smashed by a 6th-grade battle emperor. Where's his face? Buzz, the purple glow swept across his body. The blood guard, who had flown into a rage out of humiliation, suddenly felt a chill run down his entire body. He widened his eyes. He saw Xiao Bai's ice-cold gaze. The big chopper reflected a cold light under the sunlight. Damn it! He felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. With a whistling sound, the big chopper slashed toward him. This slash from Xiao Bai was as fast as lightning. The air seemed to be torn apart by this slash. The swishing sound caused the blood guard to feel a chill run down his spine. It was true that the two blood guards could withstand the 9th-grade puppet, Xiao Bai, head-on. However, that was under the premise that they relied on true energy to carry out long-range attacks. His fleshly body was simply incomparable to the freakish body of this puppet. This close-range attack, swoosh, the big chopper slashed down. Blood splattered everywhere. The other blood guard pulled at the right time, preventing the dumbfounded blood guard from being chopped into 2 halves by Xiao Bai's slash. However, one of his arms was directly chopped off. As blood splattered, a miserable howl rang out. The eyes of the blood guard, who had one arm chopped off, were about to spurt out blood. With his remaining hand, he grabbed and sucked back the blood and his arm that was chopped off. Xiao Bai stopped hovering in the air and once again landed on the ground. The moment he landed, he once again burst forth and continued to charge toward the 2 blood guards. His purple eyes flickered, and the blade was like a dragon. Go! Go quickly! We are no match for this puppet. The blood guard, who had one arm chopped off, said. Then, without hesitation, they turned around and shot into the distance. Since they could fly in the air, Xiao Bai was unable to catch up to them. Boom! Xiao Bai once again landed on the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. Inside the store, Bufong held the black turtle black walk with one hand and was about to smash it again. He did not expect that the 2 cowards would actually run away. Feeling bored, Bufong moved his mind. The black turtle constellation walk turned into black smoke and dissipated, returning to the symbol on Bufong's wrist. Smacking his lips, Bufong rubbed his chin. There was nothing that a dull walk couldn't solve. If one walk didn't work, then he would use 2. Chapter 320. Light Wind Empire's Imperial City, outside the city. A wave of terrifying energy dispersed with a loud rumble. The clouds seemed to be on the verge of exploding. A silhouette shot down from the clouds and landed on the ground below the city walls. It was as if a sledgehammer had slammed into the ground, causing the ground to tremble as if it was about to shatter. The crowd could see the fine cracks spreading out like a spider's web. Ji Qingyu's troops retreated a little, distancing themselves from that spot. Everyone looked at the dust-filled area with grave expressions. The clear sky pagoda of 100,000 mountains is only SOSO. A cold laugh resounded in the sky. It was filled with disdain. Zhao Masheng, who was riding a spirit horse beside Ji Qingyu, smirked. The venerable master had indeed won. Buzz! The crowd on the city walls paled. The warriors of the 100,000 mountains felt their hearts sink to the bottom. Their great elder was defeated? Bah! Evil man, don't get ahead of yourself. With an angry snort, a black silhouette suddenly enlarged within the dust. A gourd grew larger at a speed visible to the naked eye and smashed toward the venerable master in the sky. The venerable master's eyes flashed with disdain. His black and white hair fluttered in the wind as he lifted his foot. A huge amount of black true chi converged and formed a huge foot in the sky. That foot stomped down fiercely. The gourd collided with the foot and exploded. The inflated gourd trembled and shrank back like a deflated balloon. The chubby elder's eyes widened. He was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. The gourd fell back into his hand. However, the sole of the foot continued to stomp down. Bang! Like an earthquake, a giant footprint appeared in front of the imperial city's gate. Cracks spread out along the footprint. Everyone on the city walls felt as if their hearts had been stomped on and were about to be crushed. Great Elder, the warriors of the 100,000 mountains were on the verge of despair. What are you shouting for? I'm not dead yet. Cough, cough. A figure appeared on the city walls. He crawled up, his face covered in dust, and he coughed incessantly. The chubby elder looked solemnly at the Shura sect venerable, standing proudly in the void, and sighed in his heart. The Shura sect's cultivation technique was simply too domineering. This venerable's cultivation had already reached the mid-stage of the Supreme Being realm. Coupled with the domineering cultivation technique, he was no match for him at all. The venerable master looked at the chubby old man indifferently. He raised his hand, and the pitch-black true chi swirled around him again. Suddenly, his mind moved, and he looked toward a certain spot on the city wall. There, two beams of blood-red light suddenly burst forth, instantly speeding past, rushing out of the city wall and hovering in the void. As the blood-red light dissipated, the two blood guards were revealed. The blood guards have returned. It seems that they have retrieved the soul congregation array. The venerable master suddenly thought of something. However, when he saw the appearance of the two blood guards, his pupils shrank. The two blood guards were in an indescribable sorry state. One of them had even lost an arm, and his face was as pale as a sheet of paper. What was going on? How did he get hurt? What happened to retrieving the soul congregation array? You venerable master, we failed. The uninjured blood guard said to the venerable master with grief and indignation. They didn't expect the store to have a terrifying 9th-grade puppet. The puppet's physical body was incomparably sturdy, and its combat strength was even more valiant. Most importantly, there was a freaking bastard in the store who liked to shift the blame to others. If it weren't for the blame, they would have been able to tangle with the puppet for a while. The pitiful state of the two blood guards immediately stunned everyone. On top of the city wall, Ji Qingxue excitedly slapped his palm on the city wall. As expected, it wasn't that easy to break into Owner Boo's store. It was guarded by a supreme beast. This group of people was simply asking for trouble. Up until now, Ji Qingxue had never seen anyone take advantage of Owner Boo's store. Down below, Ji Qingyu and Zhao Mushing trembled as they sucked in a breath of cold air. The two Shura sect blood guards, who could withstand a supreme being powerhouse, were actually defeated, and one of their arms was chopped off. This was simply terrifying. Bu Fang's expressionless face once again appeared in Ji Qingyu's mind, and he couldn't help but tremble. Zhao Mushing's face was ferocious and full of unwillingness. How could this be? How could two blood guards fail to defeat Bu Fang? The venerable master took a deep breath and felt a little troubled. The two blood guards actually lost an arm. Could it be that the person who stole the soul congregation array was really that strong? Ha ha! The Shura sect demon is only SOS. On top of the city wall, the chubby elder saw the pitiful state of the blood guards and immediately burst into laughter. His face was full of excitement. Owner Bu was indeed amazing. No wonder he could cook a delicacy like the dragon liver popsicle. The laughter was extremely ear-piercing. When it reached the blood guards' ears, their eyes turned bloodshot. They were the Shura sect blood guards, and they could not be humiliated. Step down. Take him away to heal his wounds. Let him recover his arm first. The venerable one held down the blood guard, who was about to make a move, and said calmly. He then looked at the chubby old man below. His brows immediately furrowed. Even though the chubby elder was injured, it wouldn't be easy for the venerable master to kill him. After all, he was a 9th-grade supreme being. He still had ways to preserve his life. Venerable Master, but the Soul Congregation Array. I will personally retrieve the Soul Congregation Array. You guys go and heal your wounds first. The Shura sect is about to recover, and all blood guards must be present, the Venerable Master said. Patting the blood guards, the two blood guards descended and joined Ji Qingyu's army. Then, the Venerable Master turned his head and looked at the city wall. Step by step, he walked toward the city wall. An uproar broke out on top of the city wall. As the Venerable Master walked in the air, the pressure in the air increased. Ji Qingxue's face turned pale. He felt a pressure that made his heart palpitate. The pressure made his legs tremble. A ninth-grade Supreme Being was indeed powerful. Stop! Of course, the chubby elder wouldn't allow the Venerable Master to charge at him unscrupulously. He shouted, "You're no match for me. You can't stop me," the Venerable Master said. The chubby elder's face was instantly filled with shame and anger. "Even if I can't defeat you, this is the capital of a nation. As Supreme Beings, we shouldn't interfere in this war. Otherwise, even if you slaughter the entire city today, the Supreme Beings of the Southern region won't let you off," the chubby elder shouted. The Venerable Master stopped in his tracks. A strong wind blew past, fluttering his clothes. "Let me enter the city. I only want to take back the Shura sect's belongings. I also want to settle the score with that person for injuring our blood guards." He wasn't going to slaughter his way into the city. Hearing the Venerable Master's words, the crowd on the city walls heaved a sigh of relief. The terrifying pressure that burst out from the Venerable Master made them think that this Shura sect demon was going to slaughter the entire Light Wind Imperial City. It turned out that he was just going to cause trouble for owner Bu Ji Qingxue frowned. He wanted to say something, but Elder Sun pulled him back. "Your Majesty, it's better if you don't say anything. To a Supreme Being, the Emperor is nothing but an ant. If you anger that Shura sect demon, it's not worth it to lose your life for nothing," Elder Sun said solemnly. "Since that Bufong's store has someone who can injure the blood guards, what else do you have to worry about? You should be worried about yourself and your empire." For a moment, Ji Qingxue was speechless. The chubby old man still wanted to stop him, but the Venerable One was already a little impatient. He glared at them, and a murderous aura burst forth. A monstrous black aura swept over like a black cloud, giving people a huge sense of oppression. "Don't stop me, or I won't be polite anymore. When that happens, don't blame me when the Imperial City turns into a river of blood." The chubby elder was stunned. That's right, to the Shura sect demon, slaughtering an entire city was nothing. The Venerable Master took one step at a time, stepping over their heads, making them feel powerless. The chubby elder watched as the Venerable Master walked toward Fong Fong's little store. He gritted his teeth, stretched his fat waist, and followed. Chapter 321. In the sky above the Imperial City, a black-robed figure slowly traversed the air. With every step, the air seemed to condense and solidify into solid bricks, allowing the figure to tread on the air effortlessly. The Shura sect venerable's face was gloomy as he sped toward the general location of Fong Fong's little store. Outside the Imperial City, Ji Qingyu ordered his army to wait for orders. This time, he was truly afraid. Even the Shura sect blood guards were defeated and couldn't do anything to Bufong. Could the Venerable really defeat Bufong? Once the Venerable One was defeated, they could only retreat. After all, facing a supreme beast that even the Venerable couldn't handle, what reason did they have not to retreat? Inside Fong Fong's little store, after defeating the two blood guards, Bufong once again took out the talisman magic array. People kept coming to ask for this magic array, which was enough to show how precious it was. Could it be that there was some secret he didn't know about? Bufong furrowed his brows and carefully studied it again. The 5 talismans were exquisitely carved, each with a complicated magic array drawn on it. The magic array reflected each other and formed an even more complicated magic array. Although it was called a magic array, it was more like a cage. Inside the magic array, There were white silhouettes baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, howling miserably. This evil thing. Bufong placed a magic array on the table. Green smoke curled around his hand, and then the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. What would happen if this magic array was broken? Bufong couldn't help but be eager to give it a try. Just as Bufong was about to cut open the magic array, a monstrous pressure descended upon the store. This pressure was even stronger than the aura of the two blood guards at the peak of half a step to the Supreme Being level. Bufong's heart skipped a beat. Rumble. The skies seemed to darken at this moment. It was as if dark clouds were looming over the store. Bufong put away the talisman magic array and raised his eyebrows. There were a lot of people coming to cause trouble today. One wave had left, and another wave had come. When he arrived at the store's entrance, Bufong immediately saw the black-robed expert walking through the air. The appearance of this black robe felt somewhat familiar to him. Aren't these people from the Azura's Gate? Bufong had come into contact with the Azura's Gate experts quite a number of times, and he knew that this group of people liked to wear black robes. Previously, the Venerable Master did not know the exact location of the store, but he could sense the aura of the talisman array. After all, the departed soul orb was in his hands, so he was no stranger to the aura of the Soul Congregation array. The Venerable One's indifferent gaze fell on Bufong. Her black and white hair fluttered in the wind. He's only a 6th-grade battle emperor. The Venerable Master furrowed his eyebrows. He could see through Bufong's cultivation base at a glance, but he felt even weirder. As he stood in the air, he could feel a sense of danger coming from a store. It was an indescribable sense of danger. If he could sense danger, even with his cultivation in the middle stage of the Supreme Being realm, could there be some extraordinary existence hidden within the store? What could it be? The Venerable Master was suspicious. He glanced at Bufong, then shifted his gaze to Xiao Bai, who was standing behind Bufong. Then, his gaze shifted to Ouyang Xiaoi, who was stretching her head out. Finally, his gaze fell on the big black dog lying in front of the door. A dog? If there was a possibility of a supreme beast in the store, it would be this plump black dog. But was a dog a supreme beast? Was that even possible? The Venerable Master did not sense any aura of a supreme being from the black dog. Are you the one who injured my Azura's Gate blood guards? A melodious voice rang out. The Venerable Master coldly asked Bufong. The corners of Bufong's mouth twitched. As expected, he took out the talisman magic array and casually waved his hand. You're here for this magic array too, aren't you? Soul Congregation magic array. The Venerable Master's pupils constricted as he stared at the talisman magic array in Bufong's hand. This was something related to the revival of the Azura's Gate. That's right. Hand it over to me. The Venerable Master took a step forward. Then, his figure blurred as he left behind a trail of afterimages in the air. In a split second, he appeared in front of Bufong. Waves of energy billowed in the air as the pressure surged. This was the pressure of Supreme Being. However, within the store, Bufong was not affected in the slightest. The chubby elder, who was watching from afar, sucked in a breath of cold air as he murmured to himself. As expected, Owner Bu is indeed not simple. To be able to remain calm under the pressure of a Supreme Being, this kind of bearing is simply monstrous. Today, 3 groups of people have come for this talisman magic array. You're the 3rd. Is this magic array really that important? Bufong casually tossed the magic array in the air, causing the Venerable Master's energy to fluctuate. An item related to the revival of the Azura's Gate was casually tossed around by this ant-like kid like it was a toy. The Venerable Master felt humiliated. This kind of humiliation could only be erased by killing Bufong once and for all. I've said, hand it over. The Venerable Master bellowed. His voice surged forward like waves of energy. The crushed rocks on the ground began to tumble. In that instant, Xiao Bai's eyes turned purple. The giant machete appeared in front of Bufong, shielding him. The blade gleamed as it slashed at the Azura's sect Venerable Master. Get lost. The Venerable Master was enraged. He casually waved his hand and collided with Xiao Bai's slash. Boom! Under the venerable master's palm, Xiao Bai couldn't help but take a step back. His purple eyes flickered incessantly. A sharp pain surged through him. The venerable master lowered his head to look at his palm, only to discover that there was a bloody gash on his palm. He, a mighty mid-stage, supreme being warrior, was injured by an iron puppet. A ninth-grade puppet, huh? I've underestimated you. The venerable master sneered. However, he wasn't the least bit afraid. A mere puppet was nothing to be afraid of. To a supreme being warrior, a puppet was just a puppet. Bu Fong was slightly taken aback. This was the first time he saw Xiao Bai being forced back. The old man in front of him had a really high cultivation level. Pitch black, true energy burst forth from the venerable master's body. Then, a pack of true energy wolves materialized in front of him. These wolves were formed from black true energy. Their eyes emitted a bloodthirsty luster as they stared at Xiao Bai. The wolves howled and charged toward Xiao Bai. The blade flickered as Xiao Bai brandished his machete and slashed at the wolves. The true energy wolves were all chopped into pieces. Xiao Bai's mechanical body was as solid as a boulder. He wasn't afraid of the wolves' bites. The venerable master narrowed his eyes. This was the first time he had seen such a peculiar puppet. Even a famous puppet sect in the Hidden Dragon continent didn't have such a strange puppet. However, no matter what kind of puppet it was, since it dared to stop him from retrieving the Soul Congregation array, he would dismantle it. The venerable master took a step forward. His energy surged, and he appeared in front of Xiao Bai. He clenched his fist and smashed it towards Xiao Bai, as if he was going to break a mountain. Whitey blocked the attack with its machete, and with a loud explosion, its entire body was sent flying backward, crashing into the ground, causing the ground to shatter into jagged rocks. Bu Fong looked at Xiao Bai being suppressed by the venerable master and furrowed his brows. Although Xiao Bai's injuries were insignificant because he was a robot, he couldn't go on like this. With a thought, the black turtle constellation walk appeared in his right hand once again. The pitch-black, unadorned black turtle constellation walk emitted a heavy aura. True energy gushed out, pouring into the black turtle constellation walk. The black tortoise pattern on the black turtle constellation walk suddenly emitted light. That unassuming black walk suddenly turned into a golden walk. It became as resplendent as the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. Grabbing the cold edge of the black turtle constellation walk, Bu Fong took a deep breath. Then, he expressionlessly threw the black turtle constellation walk. The golden black turtle constellation walk carried a terrifying aura like a vast mountain as it smashed toward the venerable master. Wherever it passed, it was as if the air was smashed into pieces. After punching Xiao Bai once again, the venerable master instantly raised his head and saw the golden walk that was smashing toward him. What is this? A half-divine tool? The venerable master furrowed his brows and punched toward the black turtle constellation walk. Boom! The fist and the black turtle constellation walk collided. The venerable master's face instantly changed. He felt as if his fist had smashed into a solid mountain. His fist was a little numb. This F***er, the true energy in his body surged. The venerable master changed his fist into a palm, and both palms simultaneously patted on the black turtle constellation walk. His body moved horizontally for a distance in the air, but in the end, he managed to intercept the black turtle constellation walk. This walk that could knock out the blood guards was ultimately unable to deal with a true venerable master. Bu Fong felt a little regretful. The true energy in his body had been consumed by more than half in an instant. This black turtle constellation walk consumed more true energy than the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. As the true energy dispersed, the black turtle constellation walk also dissipated with a bang. Then it gathered in front of Bu Fong and was grabbed by Bu Fong's hand. It's actually a half-divine tool, a ninth-grade supreme being level puppet. Such a mystical, half-divine tool. Who exactly are you? It's impossible for the forces of the southern region to cultivate an existence like you. Don't tell me you're from outside the southern region. The venerable master's hands were a little numb. He shook them off, but his gaze was fixed on Bufong. Blackie, who was lying on the ground, heard the venerable master's words. Its dog ears instantly twitched. It slightly raised its dog head and looked at the venerable master with a solemn expression. Chapter 3:22. Clutching the black turtle constellation wok, Bufong exhaled softly. The atmosphere was stagnant. The venerable master, hovering in the air, fixed his gaze on Bufong, his aura surging. In the distant sky, the chubby elder smacked his lips. Bufong's background was obviously not simple. He had a ninth-grade puppet and a semi-divine weapon. How could he be the owner of a small restaurant in a mortal empire? He must have a powerful background. The chubby old man was an expert of the Clear Sky Pagoda of the 100,000 Mountains. The Clear Sky Pagoda was one of the top forces in the southern region. However, he had never heard of Bufong. The only time he had heard of him was when his little girl was talking about delicacies. Such a low-key person was a little strange. No matter who you are, no matter what power you have behind you, if you dare to hinder the rise of our Shura sect, then die. The Shura sect venerable master pondered for a moment, his eyes turning cold. Finally, he opened his mouth, his chilling voice echoing through the sky. He didn't know which power Bufong belonged to, but that was no longer important. The Soul Congregation Array was the key to the Shura sect's resurgence. It must not fall into the hands of an unknown person. Buzz a buzzing sound. The Shura sect venerable master's aura suddenly exploded, as if a shackle had been broken. His hair turned blood red in that instant. He seemed to have become a lot younger. His tall and muscular body bounced in the air like a spring, charging at Bufong like a cannonball. Xiao Bai's purple eyes flickered. He stood in front of Bufong, waving his machete. Instantly, a dense torrent of knife lights poured out. Get lost! The venerable master was incomparably brutal, his eyes filled with cruelty. His blood-red hair fluttered in the wind, and he casually swung his palm at Xiao Bai. As he swung his palm, black true energy permeated the air, shattering the sky full of knife lights. It was a loud bang. Xiao Bai was sent flying by this palm strike. His body spun a few times in the air before landing on the ground. The Venerable One could not kill Xiao Bai, but Xiao Bai could not do anything to the Venerable One either. In the distance, the chubby old man was hesitating whether he should go and help, but he wasn't sure if he could deal with the Shura's Gate demon. This demon's cultivation was really powerful, and his cultivation technique was even more mysterious. He didn't have any confidence. Just as he was hesitating, his gaze froze, because he realized that Bufong, who was below, seemed to have made a new move. Bufong exhaled a long breath. Grabbing the black turtle constellation wok, he actually planned to throw it out again. Isn't his wok unable to do anything to this demon? You still want to smash it? The chubby elder widened his eyes. The reverend sneered and flipped his palm. Suddenly, a surge of vital energy surged and covered his arm. Bufong bellowed. Then, he turned around and threw out the golden-black turtle constellation wok once again. Ridiculous. Are you out of tricks? Seeing that Bufong still wanted to use this move, the Venerable One's face became colder and colder. Looking at the golden wok that was hurtling toward him, he threw out a punch that was wrapped in dense, true energy. This punch ruthlessly smashed onto the wok. The heavy black turtle constellation wok pressed down on the Venerable One, causing his face to turn solemn. The true energy wrapped around his arm was scattered. However, under this punch, the black turtle constellation wok also shot back. Hey, don't you want your jade talisman array anymore? All of a sudden, when the black turtle constellation wok flew backward, a faint voice suddenly rang out, reaching the Venerable One's ears. The Venerable One's eyes shrank. Focusing, he felt all the hair on his body stand on end. Because he realized that behind the black turtle constellation wok, the Soul Congregation Array, formed by the 5 jade talismans, was hurtling toward him. It was about to collide with the black turtle constellation wok that he had punched back. Damn it. No. The Venerable One's hair stood on end as he roared. His figure flickered continuously, rushing toward the Soul Congregation Array. The Soul Congregation Array could not be lost. Xiao Bai's figure suddenly jumped up from the rubble on the ground. His purple eyes flashed, and a knife with sharp knife energy slashed toward the Venerable One. The Venerable One's dashing figure was instantly blocked. After all, Xiao Bai was a ninth-grade puppet. Even if the Venerable One could suppress Xiao Bai, he did not dare to easily take on Xiao Bai's knife. The muscles on his body bulged, and he instinctively took a step back. This step made him feel despair. He could only watch as the Soul Congregation Array and the Black Turtle Constellation Walk, which was as heavy as a mountain, collided. Bu Feng's eyes slightly opened, and his heart was actually a little excited. Crack! It was clear and melodious, like the sound of a jade artifact falling on the ground and shattering. It was very ordinary and very simple. The Black Turtle Constellation Walk was heavy, and it crushed the Jade Talisman Array with a loud bang. The 5 Jade Talismans were already badly damaged, and after the collision, they became even more damaged, directly exploding. Dense cracks and fissures spread across the Talisman Array. As a fierce wind suddenly blew in the sky. What followed was a blood-curdling wail that made one's hair stand on end. This is the Soul Congregation Array. The Soul Congregation Array that absorbed the spiritual essences and remnant souls of tens of thousands of people. It was actually smashed just like that. The spiritual essences and remnant souls that exploded out will definitely turn this area within a 10-mile radius into a sinister ghost domain. The Venerable One's face was full of shock and anger. He did not feel the pain of turning a 10-mile radius into a ghost domain. What he felt was the pain of the tens of thousands of people's spiritual essences and remnant souls that he had painstakingly collected. So many spiritual essences and remnant souls disappearing. To the Shura sect, it was a great loss. The anguished howl resounded throughout the imperial city. In the sky, pitch-black clouds suddenly covered the sky, and the entire imperial city was instantly plunged into darkness. Wisps of white spiritual essences and remnant souls rushed out from the broken array, bringing with them a monstrous resentment and ferocity, wandering the land. Bu Feng's expression changed slightly. He did not expect such a terrifying scene to occur when the array was broken. The slightly plump elder in the distance also had a face as cold as ice. He knew that the reason the Shura sect incited this war was to collect these remnant souls and spiritual essences in preparation for the Shura sect's resurrection. But how could such a small array contain so many spiritual essences and remnant souls? The Shura sect was indeed extremely vicious. This reminded him of the massacres committed by the Shura sect in the southern region years ago. The Shura sect venerable, with a head full of blood-red hair, roared in anger, and hurriedly took out a gray bead from his robe. Semi-divine tool. Departed soul orb. The slightly plump elder's eyes flashed, and he couldn't help but exclaim. With a thought, the venerable master began to activate the departed soul orb, causing it to emit a misty gray light. So many spiritual essences and remnant souls could not be wasted like this. The array was gone, but he had to at least absorb these spiritual essences into the departed soul orb. The venerable master clenched his teeth and activated the departed soul orb. The spiritual essences that filled the sky immediately let out terrified howls and converged toward the departed soul orb. However, a lazy dog bark suddenly resounded through the sky. The dog's bark was not loud, but with this bark, the howls of the spiritual essences that filled the sky suddenly stopped, and the figures that were sucked into the departed soul orb also froze in the air. The venerable master's face was filled with confusion. With a thought, he looked toward the store and saw that the fat black dog that had been sleeping soundly in front of the store had actually stood up. The black dog's fat body swayed as it slowly and elegantly strode forward with its graceful cat-like steps. The dog's paws were very light, and there was no sound as it scratched the ground. What is this dog trying to do? The venerable master's eyes widened. and his heart was filled with doubt. Could it be that this dog had some kind of background? Bufong was also puzzled. Could it be that Blackie was going to make a move? Walking to the center of the alleyway, Blackie tilted its head and looked at the sky full of spiritual essences and remnant souls. Its mouth actually curved into a human-like grin. Then, it raised its head and let out a melodious bark. This bark was long and smooth, as if it could not be stopped at all. The departed soul orb flickered for a while, and its attraction toward the spiritual essences suddenly disappeared. The spiritual essences that filled the sky formed a funnel shape and rapidly poured into Blackie's barking mouth. The wind howled, and the clouds changed color. The sky, full of ferocious spiritual essences, after a few breaths, were all sucked into Blackie's mouth. The dark clouds dispersed, and everything became peaceful again. The dog's bark stopped, and what followed was the sound of someone finishing a delicious meal. A burp. As expected, these spiritual essences and remnant souls are still lacking compared to the delicious sweet and sour dragon meat ribs. A gentle and soft male voice resounded through the air. Blackie stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. He looked at the Shura sect venerable master and said, Chapter 323. A gentle and soft male voice rang through the air, lingering in the area. What followed was a melodious burp. Burp. The burp was like a sudden clap of thunder, scaring the Shura sect venerable who was still floating in the air. His expression, as if he had just seen a ghost, was comical. His blood-red hair fluttered in the wind, his eyes widened, and his mouth slightly agape. Clutching the glowing departed soul orb, he was in a daze. What did he see? What did he see? The wailing souls that filled the sky were actually all eaten by a dog. The Shura sect had worked so hard to start a war and collected a soul congregation array, tens of thousands of soul essences, and they were all fed to a dog. Fed to a dog. Why did this dog suddenly appear? Why did this dog eat soul essences instead of dog biscuits? Are you King kidding me? The venerable master felt as if his heart was being torn apart. Those were soul essences, tens of thousands of soul essences, the hope of the Shura sect's rise. How could it be gone just like that? Clutching the departed soul orb, the venerable master was on the verge of going berserk. His angry roar echoed through the air. Surging true energy surged and expanded. Pitch black, true energy gushed out of the venerable master's body like a madman. The venerable master was on the verge of losing his mind. The terrifying amount of true energy was frightening. Hovering in the distance, the chubby elder was secretly delighted to see the venerable master go berserk. But when he felt the venerable master's nearly limitless true energy, he was terrified. Burp! Blackie burped again, grinning. I'm telling the truth. This soul essence has no taste at all. It's not as delicious as the sweet and sour dragon ribs, Blackie said seriously. Bufong felt that the venerable master was in despair. Damn you, dog. Do you know what you ate? You ate the hope of the Shura sect. The venerable master's eyes turned blood red. He put away the departed soul orb and stared coldly at Blackie, who was standing gracefully on the ground. His blood-red hair fluttered in the wind as a terrifying, murderous aura rose to the sky. Little Black raised its head and stuck out its tongue to lick it. Even the Shura's Gate's hope is not as delicious as sweet and sour ribs. Eat your sister. The venerable one was enraged. His entire body shook in the air, and then, as though he had broken through the speed of sound, he charged toward Blackie, who was on the ground. Supreme Beast, right? This must be the Supreme Beast hidden within the store. Even if you're a Supreme Beast for destroying the hope of our Azura Gate, you must die. I want you to spit out everything you ate. Roar. The punch was accompanied by surging vital energy. The vital energy condensed and turned into a huge black wolf with blood-red eyes. It appeared behind the venerable. In the distant sky, the chubby old man's mind was trembling. He sensed the terrifying pressure contained in the venerable one's punch. If this punch landed on his body, he would definitely explode. Unstoppable. Bufong watched as the Shura sect venerable fell from the sky like a blood-colored cannonball, and the corners of his mouth twitched. He wasn't the least bit worried about the plump dog's safety. Even though he didn't know Black's true strength, he was confident. Black stuck out its tongue and elegantly raised its dainty dog paw. The black dog paw lightly waved at the spot where the Shura sect venerable was hanging. Then, the phantom of a dog paw appeared in the sky. The phantom of the dog paw wasn't huge. When it collided with the Shura sect venerable's wolf punch, a terrifying force and a loud boom erupted. Almost the entire imperial city heard the rumble. On the city walls of the imperial city, Ji Qingxue and the others stared in the direction of the store in horror. Was this a battle between the Shura sect venerable and the store's supreme beast? This kind of fluctuation was simply terrifying. Outside the city walls, Ji Qingyu, Zhao Musheng, and the others' faces darkened. Sure enough, Bufong's store wasn't as simple as it seemed. Could it be that even the middle stage supreme being Venerable One couldn't defeat that dog? Energy surged throughout the Venerable One's body. He punched out, causing his blood-red hair to flutter backward. His face was hideous and filled with murderous intent. However, when his punch collided with the dog paw, he discovered that a huge rebound force was transmitted to him. This force made his heart tremble, and a sense of crisis welled up within him. Bang! Under his gaze, the dog's paw directly broke apart his ash wolf fist and swatted at him from the sky. True energy converged on his body. When the dog's paw landed on his body, the venerable master was sent flying. He drew an arc in the sky and fell backward, landing on the ground with a loud thud. It caused the surrounding houses to explode and collapse. Black's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. His paw didn't kill the guy. It seemed that this guy was quite strong. A whistling sound rang out as the Venerable One returned to the sky. The true energy armor on his body was in tatters. His face was extremely gloomy, and a trace of fear emerged in the depths of his eyes. Late-stage Supreme Being? Or a spirit beast at the peak of the Supreme Being level? This terrifying thought emerged in the Venerable One's mind. The 9th grade Supreme Being realm was a peculiar realm. In this realm, the gap between each small realm was extremely huge. For example, when he fought against the chubby elder at the early stage of the Supreme Being realm could only be suppressed. If the dog in front of him was really a spirit beast at the late stage of the Supreme Being realm, or even the peak of the Supreme Being realm, then the Venerable One could only grit his teeth and swallow his loss. No, it can't be a spirit beast at the late stage of the Supreme Being realm. This type of spirit beast has its own dignity. How could it become the gatekeeper of a small store? The Venerable One calmed himself down and instantly took a deep breath. He felt that he must have been deceived by the dog's appearance. It actually didn't die. The gentle and soft male voice rang out once more. The Venerable One's tensed heart was instantly stunned. Then, his pupils constricted. Under his gaze, the figure of the black dog that was standing gracefully on the ground began to change. Its originally small and exquisite body became enormous, as if it had transformed into a giant wave. Its eyes were filled with brutality, and the fur on its body also stood up fiercely. Boom! The dog's paw scratched the ground, and a series of sonic booms rang out. The Venerable One only felt a gust of wind blowing, and then an enormous figure appeared in front of him. It was a pair of fierce and deep eyes. The moment the Venerable One met the dog's eyes, he felt as if his mind was being sucked into it. No! The Venerable One roared angrily. A blood-colored aura floated up, and he punched toward Black's enormous head. However, before this punch could be unleashed, it was smashed by the dog's paw. His entire person was stunned, and in an instant he was smashed into the ground, creating a deep pit. Boom! The enormous Blackie landed on the ground, and the ground shook. The Venerable One crawled out of the pit in a sorry state, and there was no longer any will to fight in his eyes. This dog was too terrifying. Bang! Another dog's paw smashed into him, and the Venerable One was once again smashed into the air. He was like a rubber ball, crashing into several houses. In a daze, the Venerable One seemed to feel a terrifying pressure approaching. Again, blood dripped from the corner of the Venerable One's mouth. His Supreme Being body was about to be smashed into pieces. With a wave of his hand, he took out several jade talismans. True energy stirred, and these jade talismans were all smashed toward Blackie. As they floated in the air, these jade talismans exploded, and dazzling sparks flickered in the sky above the Imperial City. This was the second time Bu Fong saw Blackie fight like this, and he didn't expect it to be as hardy as it was before. Supreme Being experts in the middle stage were completely squashed in Blackie's hands. What kind of dog was this Blackie? Bu Fong was suddenly curious about Blackie's origins. In the distant sky, the chubby old man had long been scared out of his wits. The sudden appearance of Blackie and the Venerable One was completely out of his expectations. This demonic, godlike dog was simply deranged. Cough, cough. The Venerable One was coughing up blood, and his body was on the verge of breaking. That dog's paw slapped down again and again, leaving him with no way to resist. He felt powerless. He felt that this dog was definitely toying with him. Toyed with by a dog, powerless to the extreme, he finally crushed the last jade talisman. As soon as the jade talisman was crushed, a seemingly ancient sword intent awoke. A blood-colored sword energy converged in the sky. It turned into a giant blood-colored sword. This is the Shurasek sword. No, it's the Shurasek sword intent. The chubby elder from the clear sky pagoda was terrified. The Venerable One laughed as he coughed up blood. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as he stared at the giant dog. This sword intent was the Shurasek Overlord's sword intent, the sword intent of their Shurasek semi-divine tool, the Shurasek sword. This sword intent was enough to kill any late-stage Supreme Being expert. You dog, go to hell. The Venerable One glared at Blackie and bellowed. Blackie raised its head and looked at the Shurasek sword intent hanging above its head. Then it glanced at the Venerable One, who was laughing maniacally. Noisy. Boom. The dog's paw swept across the Venerable One's laughing body. This time it didn't send him flying, but directly smashed him into pieces. The Shurasek Venerable, a mid-stage Supreme Being expert, was dead. Chapter 3:24. The Shurasek Venerable was dead, slapped to death by a dog's paw. The chubby elder stared blankly at the scene. It was as if his soul had flown out of his body. He stared at the Venerable who had been smashed to smithereens, his heart filled with disbelief. That was the Shurasek Venerable, a mid-stage Supreme Being warrior, a high-ranking member of the Shurasek, the man who stirred up the entire southern region. Such a powerful man was actually slapped to death by a dog that had never been heard of in the southern region. The Venerable, who had suppressed him to the point where he didn't even dare to breathe loudly and stood proudly in the sky, was now reduced to a pile of smithereens. This dog was simply too brutal. When the chubby elder regained his composure, he looked at the black dog with terror in his eyes. His entire body trembled uncontrollably. Even the Shurasek sword that gathered in the sky and emitted a terrifying might paled in comparison to the terror of the black dog. What kind of opponent did the Shurasek provoke this time? The death of the Venerable was definitely an earthquake for the Shurasek. No, it was an earthquake for the entire southern region. Bu Fong was also a little dumbfounded. He did not expect that the Venerable, who was previously acting so arrogant, would actually be swatted to death by Blackie. It was as if he was swatting a fly. This Venerable was really straightforward. A buzzing sound rang out. Then, a wave of energy erupted from the spot where the Shurasek Venerable was smashed to smithereens. This energy wave was extremely violent, as if it was about to shatter the space. A wisp of white spiritual essence and remnant soul sprang out from the smithereens. It was the remnant soul of the Shurasek Venerable. The remnant soul's face was filled with shock and anger. It roared soundlessly its body contorted and its face twisted. A suction suddenly came from the smithereens. The ash-gray departed soul orb suddenly floated up. The venerable's spiritual essence and remnant soul were instantly sucked into the orb with a face full of terror. The orb twisted and finally swallowed up completely. This time around, the venerable one was truly dead. The blood-colored clouds were tumbling. Layers of thick blood-colored clouds gathered and piled up together, converging into a blood-colored longsword. The dense sword was hanging in the sky. The Shurasek sword will, so red that it looked as if it was about to drip blood, was pointed at Blackie. The sharp sword will almost overturned the entire ground. Outside the imperial capital, the blood guard who was recuperating suddenly opened his eyes and rushed out of his healing position in a panic. He stood in front of the army and stared at the Azura sword while hanging in the sky. His pupils gradually shrank, and a look of fear appeared on his face. Azura sect sword intent. Lord Venerable was actually forced to use the Shurasek sword intent. The blood guard sucked in a breath of cold air. Ji Qingyu and Zhao Mushing also felt a chill run down their spines. Riding on their spiritual steeds, they couldn't help but take a small step back. Perhaps even the Shurasek Venerable could do nothing to Bufang. Vast border city. Inside the gloomy iron tower, the masked high priestess suddenly opened her eyes. She felt a shiver run down her spine, as if something bad was about to happen. With a wave of her hand, several jade talismans floated into the sky. Her slender fingers formed a seal, and she began to calculate the talismans. However, the more she calculated, the more intense the fear in her eyes under the mask became. Suddenly, with a loud explosion, the jade talismans that were in the middle of calculation shattered into pieces on the ground. The high priestess stood up. Her chest, which was wrapped in a dedu, rose and fell violently as she panted heavily. The venerable is dead. Rumble. With a loud noise, something seemed to be awakening inside the iron tower. The aura suddenly burst forth. The high priestess looked at the heavy iron door behind her in a panic. A distant and surging aura slowly gushed out from behind the iron door. Who activated the Shurasek sword will of this noble one? Is this the aura of the departed soul orb? A hoarse voice came from behind the iron door, carrying a hint of doubt and doubt. The high priestess didn't even dare to breathe loudly. She answered with uncertainty. The venerable may have fallen. After a moment of silence, the voice faintly answered. I already know. The divine while I left on the departed soul orb has been awakened. Blackie calmly looked at the blood-colored sword while in the sky. The heavy Shurasek sword while hanging in the sky did not make him feel the slightest bit worried. He just thought it was a little fun. The Shurasek sword will. He didn't expect to see the Shurasek sword will in a remote place like the southern region. Even though the Shurasek sword will only had a form but no spirit, even though it was incomplete, it was still the Shurasek sword will, something that didn't belong to the southern region. Buzz, the blood-colored sword energy hung in the sky, causing the entire Imperial City's commoners to feel their blood boiling. It was as if the blood in their bodies was about to be drawn out and poured into the blood sword in the sky. This was as frightening as a demon god. The grayish-white departed soul orb began to spin. After absorbing the soul essence of the venerable being, the departed soul orb lit up. It was as if the departed soul orb suddenly had a soul of its own. It actually began to nimbly wander in the air. A huge, grayish figure burst out from the departed soul orb. It covered the sky and the sun, exerting an almost stagnant pressure on everyone. This pressure caused the chubby old man's face to turn pale. The Shura sect overlord, Duan Ling. The chubby elder swallowed a mouthful of saliva, his eyes filled with terror. This was a nightmarish name, a name that lingered above the heads of all the forces in the southern region. Could it be that this person had already been revived? The huge shadow's eyes were high and mighty, carrying with them an indifferent coldness. This gaze swept across the crowd and finally landed on the gigantic Blackie. Their gazes collided in the air. "You killed the Shura sect venerable? You got guts." A thunderous roar reverberated in the sky. Then, the gigantic shadow that resembled a demon god casually waved his hand and grabbed the blood sword hanging in the sky. The sword while on the Shura sect sword burst forth with unparalleled sharpness. Everyone in the Imperial City was unable to withstand this pressure. Their faces flushed red. "Die. Accompany the venerable in death." With a casual wave of his hand, the gigantic blood sword rumbled and poured toward the gigantic Blackie. The corners of Blackie's mouth curled up, revealing a human-like disdain. He took a deep breath, then looked at the Shura sect sword while slashing toward him and let out a loud bark. "Woof!" This bark resounded throughout the entire city, so much so that even Ji Qingyu's army outside the Imperial City could hear it. When the spirit beasts that Ji Qingyu and Zhao Mushing were riding heard this bark, they were startled and immediately knelt down on the ground. Ji Qingyu and Zhao Mushing felt themselves being lifted off their horses. Their expressions were ugly and filled with fear. Then, something even more frightening happened. The frightening blood sword hanging in the sky, under the dog's bark, shattered inch by inch, turning into blood-colored particles that permeated the sky and were dispersed by the wind. The gigantic shadow suddenly trembled and then condensed into the departed soul orb, making the departed soul orb look like a star in the night sky. It suddenly streaked across the sky and shot into the distance. That speed surpassed the speed of sound. Blackie stopped barking and licked his mouth. With a click of his tongue, his figure shrunk and finally transformed into a lazy, plump dog. Blackie didn't care about the departed soul orb that was taken away. To him, the departed soul orb wasn't even as attractive as Bufang's sweet and sour ribs. Striding elegantly like a cat, Blackie returned to the store. Bufang looked at it as if he was looking at a monster. Blackie rolled its doggy eyes and proudly snorted. Then, it continued to lie in front of the store's entrance and fell into a deep sleep. It seemed as if it couldn't get enough sleep. Bufang looked at Blackie, who had calmed down, and let out a sigh of relief. He looked at his surroundings. The surroundings had almost been razed to the ground. Other than the building where the store was located, all the other buildings had been destroyed in a single day. It was as if a small piece of the Imperial City had been flattened. It was a ghastly sight. At this moment, the chubby old man sat on the ground. He couldn't feel the rubble on his buttocks anymore. He didn't dare to look at Fong Fong's little store the same way he used to a mysterious young chef, a ninth-grade puppet, and a terrifyingly fat dog. Even in the southern region, this force was at the top. Blackie, who was lying on the ground, suddenly twitched its nose. Then, it opened its drowsy eyes and looked into the distance. A chubby old man was glaring at it. The chubby elder felt the gaze of the black dog, and his whole body stiffened. He smiled awkwardly, then turned around and crawled away. Outside the gates of the Imperial City, the supreme being warrior of the 100,000 Mountains had returned. His face was full of shock, and he brought with him a piece of shocking news. The invincible Shura sect venerable, who was so powerful that it made people shudder, was dead. He was killed in the process of causing trouble for Fong Fong's little store. When Ji Qingyu and Zhao Mushing heard this news, both of them were dumbfounded. Chapter 3:25. A beam of light streaked across the sky at an astonishing speed, bringing with it an ear-piercing sonic boom that made people's eardrums vibrate uncontrollably. This stream of light burst out from the light-wind imperial capital. It did not stop at all along the way as it swept past several cities. Everyone in the cities raised their heads in surprise to see the beam of light streaking across the sky. Amidst the mountains, a buzz-cut silhouette dashed out. The true energy on this silhouette was spiraling like a dragon, exuding an imposing aura. His galloping figure suddenly came to a halt. He raised his head to look at the sky and sensed a beam of light flashing past. Looking at the beam of light, his eyes were suddenly filled with doubt. "What is that?" It seems to be coming from the direction of the light wind imperial city. The buzz-cut man frowned and thought to himself. He had been speeding toward the light wind imperial city from the illusory spirit swamp, because he had received news that the Shura sect demon had colluded with the rebel army and was approaching the imperial city. There seemed to be a 9th grade supreme being among the Shura sect demons, and the imperial army was no match for them. If he did not hurry, the imperial city might be flattened by this Shura sect demon. Taking a deep breath, he once again displayed his movement technique and sped toward the imperial city. His figure streaked across the sky, creating sonic booms. At the Supreme Being realm, one's flying speed could already reach the speed of sound. Both Ji Qingyu and Zhao Muxing's faces were filled with terror. When they heard the news of the Venerable's death, they once again recalled the terror of Fong Fong's little store, and the fear of being dominated by that store surfaced in their minds. As expected, the bad premonition in their hearts once again became reality. That damned store was not flattened, and something even more horrifying happened. The Shura sect's 9th grade supreme being was killed. The Venerable died, just like that? Zhao Muxing muttered in a daze. At the same time, his heart was filled with fear, but at the same time, a trace of unwillingness welled up in his heart. He was really unwilling. He had always wanted to take revenge. Previously, he was injured by Bu Fong, and he was even expelled from the imperial city. He wanted to settle all these debts with Bu Fong. He thought that with the help of the Shura sect Venerable, Bu Fong would have to bow down obediently. However, reality was always so cruel, giving him another ruthless slap in the face. This time, his heart of vengeance was smashed to pieces. Even a supreme being was killed in the store. What qualifications did he have to get back at Bu Fong? If he were to face the supreme beast of the store, he would most likely be obliterated within minutes. Ha ha ha. When Ji Qingxue heard the news, he couldn't help but burst into laughter after the initial shock. His laughter lingered in the sky and reverberated both inside and outside the city, causing everyone's expressions to change quite a bit. The expressions of the Light Wind Empire's officials on the city gate tower relaxed as they breathed a sigh of relief. Xiao Yu and Xiao Meng looked at each other and saw the relief in each other's eyes. Xiao Meng's pale face even looked a little better. On the other hand, everyone in Ji Qingyu's army turned pale. Even the holy emissary in their hearts had been defeated. How could they possibly break through the imperial city? In the past, they were invincible because of the holy emissary. But now that the holy emissary, who made them invincible, was dead, how could they continue to be invincible? Without any hesitation, Ji Qingyu immediately ordered his troops to retreat. A loud crash resounded. Ji Qingyu's army under the city wall retreated in an orderly manner, far away from the Light Wind Empire. The 2 blood guards in Ji Qingyu's army were dumbfounded. How could this be? How could a venerable die? Didn't that store only have a 9th grade puppet? Even though that puppet was strong, it was only evenly matched with them. With the cultivation level of a supreme being in the intermediate stage, shouldn't the venerable be able to suppress that puppet? As for that black walk, no matter how strange it was, a black walk thrown by a 6th grade battle emperor wouldn't be able to kill a supreme being. I must have heard false news. The blood guard with a broken arm bellowed and coughed out a mouthful of blood. His face was filled with malevolence. However, the truth made them despair, because the chubby elder from the Clear Sky Pagoda had come out, but their venerable had not. This meant that the elder from the Clear Sky Pagoda was telling the truth. Describing the current state of Ji Qingyu's army as a defeated army was inappropriate, but it was close enough. Every soldier's morale was at an all-time low. Their faces lacked the will to fight. It was obvious that the death of their venerable was a huge blow to their morale. Ji Qingxue didn't follow up with another attack, because he didn't have the capital to do so. Even though Ji Qingyu's army had retreated, they weren't defeated by his troops. Instead, they were scared off by Owner Bu, who didn't even show his face. There were still many Shura's gate experts in Ji Qingyu's army. Even if Ji Qingxue chased after them, he might not be able to annihilate Ji Qingyu's army. If Ji Qingxue were to launch a last-ditch counterattack, Ji Qingxue might not be able to handle it. But even so, above the Imperial City's city gate, waves of cheers rang out. They were all sharing the joy of victory. Of course, there was someone among them who was embarrassed. It was Elder Sun from the godly temple of the Wildlands. After all, he was the one who wanted to hand over Bufong to the enemy in order to buy time for the warriors from the godly temple of the Wildlands to arrive. Elder Sun's face darkened as he couldn't help but let out a cold snort. Even though the final result was out of his expectations, he firmly believed that his previous decision was correct. After all, if the Supreme Being from the godly temple of the Wildlands arrived, the Imperial City would still be saved. He was that confident. Zhang Kong coughed out blood. His injuries weren't that serious. His face was also filled with joy and surprise. The image of a giant black dog appeared in his mind. The image of that black dog slaughtering countless warriors was still lingering in his mind. It was likely that this time, that black dog had made a move. Ji Chengxue retreated from the city gate with his army. They didn't return to the main hall. Instead, they hurried toward Fong Fong's little store. Before they even got close to Fong Fong's little store, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. Looking at the flattened ruins in front of them, their hearts trembled. Just how intense was this battle? Nearly a third of the capital had been flattened. Countless commoner houses had been turned into ruins in this battle, turning into rubble that covered the ground. Many homeless commoners were helplessly hiding in the distance. Ji Qingshue's joyful mood instantly disappeared. This level of battle was beyond his imagination. If this kind of battle were to happen a few more times, his imperial city would be destroyed without the need for Ji Qingyu's army to attack. After instructing his soldiers to comfort the homeless civilians, Ji Qingxue personally led a few people toward Bufong's store. Among the ruins, only the building where Fong Fong's little store was still standing. Not a single brick or tile was broken. It was simply a miracle. At the entrance of the store, a fat black dog was lying on the ground, snoring loudly. A slender figure was grabbing onto the door, intending to close it. When Xiao Xiaolong and Ouyang Xiaoyi walked out, they were also stunned by the scene in front of them. Owner Bu, thank you for your help. Otherwise, Qing Feng would have been in danger. As soon as he saw Bu Fong, Ji Qingxue strode toward Bu Fong, cupping his hands and sincerely thanking him. Behind him, the civil and military officials were all astonished. They looked at Bu Fong as if they were looking at a monster. Even though they knew that this store had a powerful background and was not to be underestimated, to be able to kill even a supreme being expert, this was absolutely terrifying. No need to thank me. It was that old man who came to the store to cause trouble. You know, the store doesn't like people causing trouble. Those who cause trouble usually don't have a good ending, Bufong calmly said as he stopped what he was doing and turned around to look at Ji Qingxue. Ji Qingxue nodded, but he still insisted on thanking Bufong. After all, without this store, Ji Qingyu's army, which had a supreme being and 2 blood guards at the peak of half a step into the supreme being realm, would have been completely unstoppable. Even though 1/3 of the imperial city was turned into ruins in this battle, it was not a problem to rebuild a ruined city. After exchanging a few words with Ji Qingxue, Bufong didn't say anything else and closed the store's door. Ji Qingxue and the others took a deep breath and returned to the main hall of the imperial palace. Once Ji Qingxue returned to the main hall, he didn't have any time to rest. He immediately ordered the officials to rebuild the city after the battle. Even though the current crisis had been averted, the people of the imperial city were anxious and needed to stabilize the situation. This was especially true for the 1/3 of the imperial city that had been flattened. They needed to immediately send more people to rebuild it. Amidst the tense atmosphere of the reconstruction, the supreme being experts of the godly temple of the Wildlands and the White Cloud Villa finally arrived at the imperial city of the Light Wind Empire. When Elder Sun saw the supreme being experts of the godly temple of the Wildlands, his eyes became moist. He finally had some confidence. Chapter 326. The supreme being of the White Cloud Villa was a man with a buzz cut. His face was as sharp as a knife, and he exuded an austere aura. His eyes were like lightning, filled with sharp sword energy. He was the commander of the White Cloud Villa, Baijan, a supreme being expert. He was second only to the master of the White Cloud Villa and had a strong cultivation level. The expert sent by the godly temple of the wildlands was bald. His skin was bronze in color, as if it was made of molten copper. He gave off a frightening feeling of strength. Beside him was a giant bird-type spirit beast. Its wings were as sharp as blades and emitted a cold glint. This was a powerful 8th-grade spirit beast, the Blade Bird. The master of the godly temple, also known as the Bald Man, was called Jean Kuan. His physical body was incomparably tough, and he was extremely powerful. The two supreme being experts arrived at the imperial city of the Light Wind Empire. They were a little puzzled. According to the information they received, the demons of the Shura sect had colluded with Ji Qingyu's army to attack the imperial city. But now, where was the army? The imperial city was also intact. There were no signs of destruction like they had imagined. Could it be that the information was fake? The two of them were a little puzzled. However, they were soon welcomed into the main hall by Ji Qingxue. After all, they were two supreme being experts, the top experts of the southern region. Seeing the terrifying signs of destruction around Fong Fong's little store, Ji Qingxue now had a better understanding of supreme being experts. At the very least, he knew that if a supreme being expert were to make a move within the imperial city, then the entire imperial city would be destroyed in an instant. Therefore, he didn't dare to be negligent. Even if the crisis was temporarily averted, he was still happy to have two supreme beings here. Facing the doubts of the two supreme being experts, Ji Qingxue told them everything that had happened. The appearance of the Shura sect blood guards and the Shura sect venerable informed the two supreme beings who had come to reinforce the imperial city. Baijan's face was solemn. His thick eyebrows twitched as he looked at Ji Qingxue. As the master of the godly temple of the wildlands, Jean Kuan came to the imperial city not only to reinforce the Light Wind Empire, but also to avenge the death of Xiada and Xiaoyu. However, after listening to Ji Qingxue's description, he sucked in a breath of cold air. "You're saying that the Azura's Gates Venerable died here?" Jean Kuan's bald head shone brightly. His eyes widened in disbelief. Of course, he knew about the Shura sect Venerable. As the Venerable of the Ferocious Temple, how could he not know the strength of the Shura sect's top warriors? That was a true supreme being. Not to mention, he was at the supreme being middle stage. Even he did not have the confidence to defeat him. However, such an existence had actually fallen in front of an unremarkable store in the Light Wind Imperial City. Is that store really that mysterious? Moreover, that store seemed to be the one that killed Xiaoyu and Xiada. When Ji Qingxue saw the shocked Jean Kuan and Baijan, he smiled but did not say anything. He knew that it would be difficult for the two of them to digest this news. Thus, he did not say much and only arranged a place for the two experts to stay before leaving. The dark night shrouded the sky above the imperial capital, and the gray clouds floated in the wind. Two crescent moons were faintly discernible in the gray clouds, like two shy and timid girls. The imperial palace's courtyard was brightly lit. In the courtyard were the warriors of the White Cloud Villa resided. Baijan looked at the pale-faced Zhang Kong before him. After listening to Zhang Kong's narration, his originally calm mind began to tremble again. So, what the emperor said was all true. That store really injured the two blood guards and killed the Shura's Gates Venerable? Baijan's thick eyebrows knitted together as he inhaled a breath of cold air. Zhang Kong nodded with a bitter smile. The chief commander had asked this question 3 times. Even though the news was hard to believe, it was the truth. That store is unbelievable. When I first came to the Light Wind Imperial City, the young miss specially asked me to take care of this store. Now, it seems like the young miss's concern was unnecessary, Baijan said. Hearing Baijan mention Wu Yunbai, Zhang Kong squinted his eyes and asked, "Chief Commander, the young miss should be on her way to the Serpentmen tribe city by now, right? Is it really all right for her to meet the Serpentine Sovereign?" "Don't worry. Even though the Serpentine Sovereign is a warrior of the Serpent Men tribe, he is still a man of principle. He won't harm a young miss for no reason. However, we need to keep an eye on that store. Since it was able to kill a Supreme Being warrior, it must be a force to be reckoned with in the southern region. Come with me to that store tomorrow. And I want to see what's so special about that store that was able to kill Ashura's Gate Venerable. In the courtyard where the warriors of the godly temple of the Wildlands resided, Elder Sun moved to Jean Kuin's side with a face full of grievance. He kept saying something to Jean Kuin with a frown on his face. He looked very wronged and ugly. Jean Kuin sat boldly on his seat. His expression became uglier and uglier as he listened to Elder Sun's complaints. Oof, that's too much. Does this store think it can be lawless just because it killed Ashura's Gate Venerable? The resources of our godly temple of the Wildlands is not something he can resist. Not only did he kill 2 warriors of our godly temple, he even dared to ridicule our godly temple of the Wildlands. I think the owner of this store has a death wish. Jean Kuin's voice was extremely cold. He slammed his palm on the table beside him. True energy burst forth from his palm, and the table was instantly reduced to dust. Elder Sun looked at the enraged Jean Kuin, and his face was filled with righteous indignation. That's right, Temple Master, we can't let this kid off. We must make him apologize to our godly temple of the Wildlands. Tomorrow, we will go to that store and see what's so special about it. Temple Master, are you going to make a move? This kid is asking for a beating. You will definitely make him kneel down and beg for mercy. Elder Sun said excitedly. Jean Kuin shot a doubtful glance at Elder Sun and rolled his eyes. Do you think I'm an idiot? Even Ashura's Gate Venerable was slaughtered after finding trouble with that store. I'm not an idiot. Why would I go there to court death? The joy on Elder Sun's face froze. What did he mean? That wasn't what you said just now? Didn't you say that you would help the godly temple of the Wildlands regain its dignity? Tomorrow, we will go to that store to see what's going on. Didn't you say that the store's dishes were delicious? Let's have a taste first before making any further plans. After all, that store has a supreme beast capable of killing a supreme being. We should take our time to think about it. Even though Jean Kuin had a boorish appearance and seemed to be all brawn and no brains, he was actually a very cautious person. Being able to sit in the position of Temple Master naturally meant that he wasn't a simple person. The godly temple of the Wildlands wasn't a peaceful place. The competition between the 3 sub-temples was extremely intense. Ji Qingyu's troops had retreated. The tense atmosphere in the imperial city dissipated in an instant, and the city became much more peaceful. The reconstruction after the disaster continued. Ji Qingyue spent a large amount of manpower to repair and rebuild the destroyed area. Early morning, when Bu Fong opened the door and the first ray of sunlight shone down from the sky, Bu Fong was a little dazed. In the past, there was an alleyway blocking the sunlight, so he rarely felt this kind of light. When the door opened, there was an empty space in front of him. It gave Bu Fong a strange feeling. Everything around him was flat ground and ruins. The buildings around the store had basically collapsed. The owner of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant, Qian Bao, was the most devastated. Because his restaurant was not far from Fong Fong's little store, it was also destroyed in the aftermath of the battle and turned into a pile of ruins. His heart was bleeding. That was the fruit of his life's work, yet it was destroyed just like that. Fortunately, the people of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant were all fine. As long as they were still alive, he could continue to make a comeback. He had already found a good location in the Imperial City and would soon begin the reconstruction of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. The location was naturally as far away from Fong Fong's little store as possible. He didn't want it to be destroyed again. If that happened, he would really die of heartache. When the fragrant sweet and sour ribs was placed in front of Blackie, the eyes of the plump dog immediately lit up and it started eating from the porcelain bowl. Bu Fong pulled over a chair and leaned against the entrance of the store. As he curled up on the chair and looked at the empty front of the store, his heart became somewhat calm. He was thinking about the temporary mission for the 10,000 bestial flames, and he seemed to be in a daze. As for Xiao Xiaolong, He had arrived at Bufong's store early in the morning and was practicing his culinary skills in the kitchen. As the warm sunlight shone on his body without any obstruction, he felt so comfortable that he wanted to doze off. He closed his eyes and was extremely satisfied. When the sound of footsteps rang out and the gravel on the ground creaked, Bufong opened his eyes. That was because several figures had appeared in front of the store, blocking the warm sunlight. Chapter 327. The 10,000 bestial flame was introduced by the system as a heaven and earth obsidian flame. The importance of this heaven and earth obsidian flame was self-evident to Bufong. Only by obtaining this heaven and earth obsidian flame would he be able to use it to power the heavy black turtle constellation wok. As a part of the God of Cooking set, the black turtle constellation wok was naturally very powerful. Bufong was looking forward to the taste of the dishes cooked with the black turtle constellation wok. He was sure that it wouldn't disappoint him. Bufong's eyes were somewhat blank, and he seemed to be in a daze as he curled up on the chair. Sounds of gravel rubbing against the soles of feet rang out. Several figures stood in front of Bufong, blocking the warm sunlight. Bufong's dazed eyes slightly moved, and he came back to his senses. Bufong looked at the 4 figures in front of him. They weren't strangers, and they were even somewhat familiar. Elder Sun looked at Bufong awkwardly, and he didn't know what to say. Previously, he had arrogantly threatened Bufong to obediently hand over the item that the Shura sect warrior wanted. At that time, he thought that Bufong would be crushed by the Shura sect warrior. Who would have expected that the roles would be reversed, and the one who would be crushed wasn't Bufong, but the damned Shura sect warrior. Zhang Kong looked at Bufong once again, and his heart was filled with a myriad of emotions. He had always been afraid of this store. Ever since he experienced that terrifying massacre, he understood how terrifying this store was. It was definitely not an existence that he could afford to provoke, regardless of whether it was the 9th grade puppet or the harmless fat supreme beast lying at the entrance. That fat dog was definitely an expert at disguising as a pig to eat a tiger. Who would have thought that a fat guard dog would actually be the terrifying supreme beast? Moreover, it was a supreme beast that could kill the Shura sect venerable. Jean Kuan stood in front of Bufong with a shiny bald head. Under the illumination of the sunlight, his bald head was dazzling. Baijian took a deep breath and looked at Bufong. This young man was fair and clean. He was neither too strong nor too skinny. The aura of true energy coming from his body was merely that of a 6th grade battle emperor. Even though reaching 6th grade battle emperor at such a young age was quite impressive, and he was much stronger than some of the disciples of the White Cloud Villa, he was not that monstrous. How could such a young man, who wasn't particularly outstanding, be the owner of a store that would soon become famous throughout the southern region? After killing the Shura sect venerable, the name of this store would soon spread throughout the entire southern region. After all, the Shura sect venerable was considered a top-notch expert in the southern region. The fall of such an expert was definitely a huge matter that could shake the entire southern territory. Bufong stood up from his seat. He didn't expect that someone would come to eat today. After all, the current situation of the store was somewhat awkward. Due to the battle the previous day, the surroundings of the store had been turned into ruins. The influential officials of the imperial city were all frightened to the point that they didn't dare to come to the store. However, Ouyang Xiaoi still happily came to the store. As one of the oldest employees in the store, Ouyang Xiaoi knew how powerful Fong Fong's little store was. She had long since become accustomed to such occurrences. Therefore, she remained calm and continued doing what she was supposed to do. "Those who want to eat, please come in," Bufong calmly said. He stood up and walked toward the store. Jean Kuan and Baijian glanced at each other before walking into the store. The moment they entered the store, they felt that it was different from the empty ruins outside. The interior of the store gave them an extremely comfortable feeling. This feeling filled their hearts with warmth. The rich aroma of food wafted within the store, causing Jean Kuan and Baijian to slightly raise their eyebrows. Is this the 5 stripes path understanding tree? Baijan discovered the 5 stripes path understanding tree placed in the corner of the wall. After the 5 stripes path understanding tree experienced its first blooming, it calmed down and didn't make any movements for a long time. Apart from the unique fluctuations it was emitting, Buffon almost thought that this tree had been killed by his dragon blood rice soup. As expected of a store that could kill a Shurus sect venerable. Its resources are indeed incredible. This 5 stripes path understanding tree is extremely rare in the Southern Territory. It is a precious item. Baijan raised his thick eyebrows and exclaimed. Jean Kuan also clicked his tongue in wonder. At their level, a 5 stripes path understanding tree wasn't considered precious. However, a spirit tree that could allow a 7th grade battle saint to advance to the 8th grade was definitely an extremely precious item. For a faction, it was no small matter. Ordinary factions might not even have one. But this store, which was only used for eating, actually had a 5 stripes path understanding tree as a potted plant. The menu is behind you. Take a look at what you want to eat, then inform that little girl. Buffon glanced at the 4 of them and calmly said. He pointed at Ouyang Xiaoi, who was standing to the side with her eyes wide open. Then he walked to a chair by the door and continued to curl up on it. The 4 of them found a table and sat down. They all looked at the menu behind them. With just a glance, the 4 of them widened their eyes in disbelief. Is this really a restaurant? The prices are a little exaggerated. Baijan's thick eyebrows furrowed as he said. He was a 9th grade supreme being, so he naturally didn't lack crystals. However, he couldn't be ripped off for no reason. Great Commander, you might not know this, but the prices of this store's dishes have always been like this. Because Owner Boo's dishes are worth this price, Zhang Kong said. He had come to the store several times, so he had a better understanding of the taste of the store's dishes. He conveniently introduced them to everyone. Of course, he hadn't eaten many dishes, so he didn't introduce some of them. Jean Kuan, haven't tasted the secular world dishes for a long time since I stepped into the Supreme Being realm. This time, I'm going to eat to my heart's content. Jean Kuan slapped the table and laughed. However, his laughter soon stopped. That was because his slap wasn't an ordinary slap. He wanted to leave a palm print on the table, but he realized that his slap had landed on the table instead. The wooden table didn't move an inch. What was going on? Buffon, who was curled up on the chair, suddenly moved. He turned his head to look at the bald-headed Jean Kuan. You want to cause trouble? Buffon asked expressionlessly. Jean Kuan squinted his eyes and looked back. However, he didn't say anything and only snorted in fear. This store was indeed a little interesting. Even though he did not use any true energy just now, he was still a Supreme Being expert after all. When he slapped the table with his palm, an ordinary table would have already turned into powder. However, not even a palm print was left on this table. Since you don't want to cause trouble, let's order the dishes. It seemed like the other party didn't want to cause trouble. Buffon curled his lips and said those words. He then continued to curl up in his chair. The sun was warm and the years were peaceful. Baijan's thick eyebrows twitched and he waved his hand at Ouyang Xiaoi, who was standing in the distance. Ouyang Xiaoi walked over. She blinked her big eyes as she looked at the 4 people and asked, What do you want? This girl was actually a 5th grade battle king. Baijan didn't pay attention to her at first. However, when he sensed the aura on Ouyang Xiaoi's body, his heart trembled. Ouyang Xiaoi was so young, yet she was already a 5th grade battle king. Her talent was truly heaven-defying. Moreover, such a genius was actually working as a waitress in a restaurant. It was truly a waste. You order the dishes. Uncle. Being stared at by Baijan, Ouyang Xiaoi's face immediately became unhappy. She snorted and said with a sullen face. Zhang Kong couldn't stand it anymore. He nudged Baijan's arm with his elbow, causing the latter to come back to his senses. Baijan was also somewhat embarrassed. However, his gaze when he looked at Ouyang Xiaoi was somewhat passionate. If he could take such a genius as his disciple, it wouldn't be long before another Supreme Being appeared in the southern region. However, this matter wasn't urgent. He could take it slowly after he finished eating the dishes. Jean Kuan could naturally see that Ouyang Xiaoi was extraordinary. However, he wasn't interested in her. After all, the ferocious hall cultivated the fleshly body, which wasn't suitable for this girl. Give me a portion of all the dishes. What is this frost blaze path understanding brew? Why is it so expensive? Baijan muttered to himself for a long time. In the end, he actually ordered all the dishes, as expected of a wealthy and imposing supreme being expert. The ears of Bufang, who was enjoying the tranquil life in the distance, suddenly twitched. Ordering all the dishes, this was a big deal. Bufang was elated as he turned his head around. Jean Kuan stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. He laughed heartily and said, I'm not used to ordinary bland food. If you have something flavorful, bring it to me. Ouyang Xiaoi was taken aback. This was the first time she heard a customer request for something flavorful. Flavorful? Then you want it spicy? While Ouyang Xiaoi was still puzzled, Bufang walked over and said, That's right. I want it spicy. If it isn't spicy enough, I won't feel good. I heard that the dishes of your store are very delicious. However, if you can't make a dish that satisfies your customers, it will damage your restaurant's reputation. Jean Kuan looked at Bufang with a faint smile. It seemed like he was provoking him. The experts of the Wildlands loved spicy food, especially the experts of the ferocious hall. They were people with heavy tastes. Bufang remained expressionless in the face of Jean Kuan's provocation. He shot a glance at the latter and then turned around. Bufang raised his hand and patted Ouyang Xiaoi's head. Then, he walked toward the kitchen. Ouyang Xiaoi's eyes immediately lit up. Was Ownerbu going to cook personally? Humph! That baldy actually dared to provoke Ownerbu. Just wait for Ownerbu to slap his face. Ownerbu's culinary skills were beyond the imagination of ordinary people. However, she really couldn't imagine what kind of spicy food Ownerbu was going to cook. Mapo tofu? That was possible. However, mapo tofu wasn't spicy. Instead, it was numb and refreshing. After walking into the kitchen, Bufang asked Xiao Xiaolong, who had a calm expression, to stop his training. Xiao Xiaolong's complexion hadn't been good for the past few days. After all, Xiao Meng was seriously injured. It would be strange if he was in a good mood. However, he still insisted on coming to the store to train. This made Bufang quite satisfied. It was a pity that Bufang couldn't help with Xiao Meng's injuries. Bufang looked at Xiao Xiaolong and said in a serious tone, Come and be my assistant. Cook all the dishes once and watch them carefully. This is a rare opportunity for you to learn. Xiao Xiaolong's eyes lit up and he nodded. He knew that Bufang was guiding him. Then Bufang turned around and faced his stove. A wisp of green smoke curled around his hand, and the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. Chapter 328. Bufang held the dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand and twirled it around, picking up the ingredients on the stove. Then he swung the knife down, and like a shooting star, the ingredients were all prepared. Xiao Xiaolong started to cook in an orderly manner on his own stove. After practicing for a long time, he already had a deep understanding of some dishes. The taste of his dishes was already comparable to that of Bufang when he had just opened his restaurant. Of course, the current Bufang was also improving. His improvement was even more terrifying. Regardless of whether it was his knife skills, carving skills, or his understanding of dishes, he had made great progress compared to when he had just opened his restaurant. He was steadily advancing toward his goal of becoming the god of cooking, who stood at the top of the food chain in this fantasy world. The fire was lit and the wok was heated. In a short while, the kitchen was filled with dense steam and a rich aroma. Bufang was cooking Baijan's dishes. His dishes were all of the more difficult ones, such as the egg-fried rice, sweet and sour ribs, and other dishes. He left them to Xiao Xiaolong to cook. The cooking speed of two people was much faster than that of one person. Every time Bufang finished cooking a dish, he would place it on the window. Ouyang Xiaoi would carry the dish and place it in front of Baijan. The aroma seemed as though it was about to materialize. The rich aroma hovered above the dish and then dissipated, blinding one's eyes. Xiao Xiaolong also placed his finished dishes on the window and let Xiaoyi carry them away. As the number of dishes increased, the aroma within the store became more and more intense. It seemed as though it would rush out of the store and fill a 10-mile radius. Bai Zhan exclaimed in admiration as he looked at the dishes being carried out one after another. As he looked at the dishes that looked and smelled great, even with his mental state of supreme being, he couldn't help but lick his lips and move his chopsticks. The dish he picked up was the red braised meat. The color was rosy, and it seemed as though the red braised meat was glowing. When he picked up the meat with his chopsticks, he could see faint, oily juices seeping out from it. The aroma of the meat was mesmerizing. Bai Zhan placed the red braised meat into his mouth. It was not as greasy as he had imagined. The meat melted in his mouth and was extremely tender. However, after it entered his stomach, his mouth was still filled with that rich aroma. This was an unprecedented experience. It was a wonderful feeling that Bai Zhan had never felt before. Bai Zhan lightly exhaled. He could not help but feel delighted in his heart. He did not expect that food could be so delicious. In his previous understanding, food was only used to fill one's stomach. Upon reaching the utmost exalted realm, he was already able to abstain from eating food. Even if he wanted to increase his sense of fullness, he could just swallow a single pill and he would be full. Therefore, for so many years, he had been obsessed with cultivation and didn't know much about food. Now that he had tasted the delicacies cooked by Bu Fong, he was completely immersed in the delicacies and was unable to extricate himself. Zhang Kong, who was sitting beside Bai Zhan, could not help but smile bitterly when he saw his commander eating like a hungry ghost. "Great Commander, please pay attention to the image of the White Cloud Villa." Jean Kuan rubbed his bald head as he looked at Bai Zhan, who was eating heartily. He was flabbergasted. Was that dish really that delicious? The fragrance that permeated the air was extremely tempting. However, for Jean Kuan, the fragrance that permeated the air was too bland. Soon, all the dishes that Bai Zhan had ordered were served. There was even a cup of Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew. After drinking a mouthful of the Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew, Bai Zhan's eyes widened and his face became flushed. He burped and felt extremely comfortable. Good wine. Bai Zhan was the commander of the White Cloud Villa. Although he rarely ate food, he still had to drink wine. After all, as a swordsman, the lack of wine was equivalent to the lack of artistic conception. He had never tasted such delicious wine before. The restless feeling of ice and fire in his stomach made all the pores on his body open. The delicacies of Fong Fong's little store were truly extraordinary. The last dish was the premium wok of fortunes. Bu Fong walked out of the kitchen with a small wok and placed it on the table. The appearance of the wok of fortunes was extremely shocking. Both Bai Zhan and Jean Kuan were extremely curious about it. The two of them suddenly realized that all the dishes that they had eaten in their entire lives couldn't compare to what they had seen in this store. Who had ever seen a dish that was brought out of a wok? Bai Zhan's excitement as he ate made Jean Kuan's heart itch. "When will my dishes be served? I can't wait any longer," Jean Kuan said as he looked at Bu Fong. Bu Fong turned his head and shot him a glance. He calmly said, "Haste makes waste." After he spoke, Bu Fong turned around and returned to the kitchen. Next, he planned to start cooking the dishes that Jean Kuan had ordered. What dishes would be delicious? Bu Fong pondered for a moment, and an idea formed in his heart. Swish, Bu Fong took out a square piece of tender tofu and spun the dragon bone kitchen knife above his palm. With a flash of the extremely gorgeous knife skill, the white and tender tofu was cut into small pieces. These small pieces seemed to be very elastic. They bounced slightly as they fell into the porcelain bowl. "If it's delicious, I will try that dish," Bu Fong muttered to himself. His mind flickered, and he started to heat up the wok. He took out a portion of the wandering dragon cow's meat and cut it into small pieces. He cut the lightning demonic garlic provided by the system into small pieces. This lightning demonic garlic was also a kind of spirit herb, but its grade wasn't high. After the pieces were cut, a spicy smell filled the air. Bu Fong squinted his eyes. He saw lightning sparks flickering on the cut of the lightning demonic garlic. He washed the tofu cubes with the Heavenly Alps spirit spring water. The tofu cubes seemed to have turned into lively spirits as they jumped around. Sizzle. The lightning demonic garlic was poured into the wok along with the diced wandering dragon cow's meat. They were stir-fried together. The fragrance of the meat was accompanied by the fragrance of the garlic. It was dense and didn't disperse. Xiao Xiaolong widened his eyes as he looked at Bu Fong's cooking steps. It seemed like he was going to cook the mapo tofu. Xiao Xiaolong thought to himself. He had eaten the mapo tofu cooked by Bu Fong, and the taste was definitely spicy. However, if it was just the mapo tofu, it wouldn't be spicy enough. Clatter. A scarlet pepper was diced by Bu Fong and thrown into the wok. After stir-frying for a period of time, accompanied by a rich fragrance, Bu Fong placed the tofu cubes that had been blanched in the heavenly mountain spirit spring water on the porcelain plate into the wok. Other people had to be careful when stir-frying tofu, but Bu Fong was different. The way he flipped the wok made it seem like he had a deep hatred for the tofu. Xiao Xiaolong, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. Bu Fong's control over his true energy was beyond Xiao Xiaolong's imagination. When he flipped the wok, his true energy enveloped the wok and sensed the changes in the tofu. It prevented the tofu from shattering during the stir-frying, and it also allowed the flavor to seep into the tofu. Bu Fong thickened the starch and poured it into the wok. Immediately, a spicy aroma wafted out. When Xiao Xiaolong smelled the aroma, he furrowed his brows. Although there was a hint of spiciness in the aroma, it wasn't very strong. After all, it was the mapo tofu, and the most important thing was the numbing sensation. The spiciness wasn't the strongest. When Jean Kun, who was sitting in the store, smelled the aroma, a strange smile appeared on his face. This aroma isn't spicy enough. Honorbu, is this all you've got? If you can't make me feel good, then your store doesn't deserve its reputation. Jean Kun comfortably leaned back on his chair and laughed heartily. Chomp! However, just when he finished laughing, the sound of Baijan eating heartily came from beside him. Jean Kun's expression stiffened, and he became slightly embarrassed. He snorted and turned his head away. Bu Fong lifted the lid of the wok, and steaming hot steam surged out of it. It seemed like a white dragon was rolling around in the air. The tofu in the wok was bubbling, and its rosy color attracted people's eyes. The spicy aroma permeated the air, and it made people feel as though their minds became clearer. This dish is called the lightning mapo tofu, Bu Fong calmly said. Xiao Xiaolong was taken aback. It turned out that it wasn't a simple mapo tofu. However, what difference could it make? Xiao Xiaolong stared at the mapo tofu in the wok, and his pupils suddenly contracted. He noticed that there were red lightning bolts flickering between the tofu. There really were lightning bolts. Xiao Xiaolong turned his head and looked at Bu Fong in surprise. Then he saw that Honorbu was holding a small jar in his hand. That small jar was entirely red, and there was a strange pattern drawn on it. Just a glance at it would make people shudder. Honorbu, what is this? Didn't he say that it was tasty? How could he miss out on this? Chili sauce. Bu Fong slightly curled up the corners of his mouth as he tossed the chili sauce in his hand. Chili sauce? Xiao Xiaolong was somewhat bewildered. This is called the abyssal chili sauce, and it's definitely tasty. Since the opening of our store, we have only produced a single drop of this chili sauce, Bu Fong said. After he spoke, he scooped up a spoonful of chili sauce from the jar and poured it into the mapo tofu. The chili sauce was extremely rosy, and it emitted a rich fragrance. As soon as it was poured into the mapo tofu, it spread out and completely fused with it. The abyssal chili sauce. A single drop could make one burn, a single spoonful could make one's life twist, and a single jar could make one sore. Chapter 329. The abyssal chili sauce was carefully selected from the abyssal black and red sky chili. It was developed from the essence energy that the abyssal demons breathed in and out every day. It was extremely spicy. Because the abyss was dark, damp, and cold, the abyssal demons had a special liking for the abyssal chili sauce. Eating a mouthful of it would make one feel as if their entire body was burning. It was a must-have delicacy for every abyssal demon. Of course, only abyssal demons could withstand the terrifying spiciness of this chili sauce. Xiao Xiaolong watched as the corners of Bu Fang's mouth curled up as he casually scooped a big spoonful of chili peppers into the lightning mapo tofu. Xiao Xiaolong was dumbfounded. Was this really okay? He remembered what Bu Fang had said about the first time he used a drop of chili sauce. It was a long time ago, but it was only a drop at that time. Just a drop was enough to make people want to live and die. This spoonful was filled to the brim. Owner Bu, are you trying to murder me? Xiao Xiaolong felt a deep sorrow for the person who ordered this dish. Who asked you to act cool and have to be strong? This time, it's definitely strong enough. Not strong enough. Come hit me. Bu Fang picked up the lightning mapo tofu. The rosy luster of the mapo tofu was extremely beautiful. Lightning arcs were jumping between the mapo tofu from time to time. They were like gorgeous fairies blooming with extreme beauty. Not bad. Bu Fang was very satisfied. He moved his nose closer to the lightning mapo tofu and sniffed it. Bu Fang furrowed his brows, feeling his nose tingle. Bu Fang leisurely walked out of the kitchen while carrying the special mapo tofu. Xiao Xiaolong thought about it and followed. He had a feeling that something interesting was going to happen. If he missed it, he might regret it. Jin Kun narrowed his eyes as he looked at the thin figure slowly walking out of the kitchen. The figure's slender fingers were holding onto a porcelain plate. The dish on the plate was steaming hot and surging. Here it comes. Jin Kun immediately sat up straight and became spirited. Aren't you very proud of your dish? Then I will spit on this dish until you doubt your life. A steaming hot dish was placed in front of Jin Kun. The aroma of the dish was very strong. Along with the billowing steam, the aroma filled the entire store. Even Bai Zhan was attracted by the aroma. He stopped what he was doing and looked toward Jin Kun. His eyes immediately lit up. Zhang Kong also stood up and looked at the dish Bu Fang had prepared for Jin Kun. The body cultivators of the wildlands loved spicy dishes. Because they were wild, their taste was wild as well. Judging from the dishes cooked by Bu Fang, it was obvious that none of the dishes had a strong taste. Therefore, Zhang Kong was very curious about what kind of dishes could satisfy Jin Kun's taste buds. Jin Kun widened his eyes as he looked at the dish placed in front of him. The red luster attracted his eyes, and the lightning arcs dancing between the tofu made his pores slightly open. He took a deep breath. A surge of spicy smell instantly rushed into his nostrils, causing his eyes to widen even more. It was really a spicy dish. However, judging from the spicy smell emitted by the dish, it wasn't very spicy. This is mapo lightning tofu. It belongs to the special cooking method of mapo tofu. It is very spicy and will definitely be strong, Bu Fang introduced. After introducing the dish, he calmly looked at Jin Kun and signaled him to continue. Elder son, who was sitting beside Jin Kun, swallowed a mouthful of saliva. It's not up to you to decide whether it's strong or not. It's up to me. Jin Kun grinned and grabbed a porcelain spoon placed beside the porcelain plate. After smelling the aroma, he steadily scooped up a spoonful of tofu. When he scooped up the tofu, a red thread was left behind by the thick sauce. Lightning arcs were dancing on this thread. The expression of interest on Bu Fang's face became more and more intense. He pulled a stool and sat in front of Jin Kun, staring at him. Jin Kun slowly put a spoonful of tofu that seemed to be burning with flames into his mouth. The dancing lightning arcs seemed to be numbing his mouth, causing his whole body to tremble. The first thing that entered his mouth was the softness. The tofu was extremely soft and tender. With a slight bite, it broke apart and filled his mouth with the rich fragrance of the tofu. Then came the numbness. It was a numbness that accompanied the lightning arcs. It made him feel as though his whole body was bathed in a pool of lightning. Then came the scalding sensation. Even though he was a supreme being, he could actually feel the scalding sensation of this dish. It was simply inconceivable. Actually, this scalding sensation wasn't really scalding. It was caused by Bufong fusing his true energy with the tofu. After all, with a supreme being's cultivation, even if one used ordinary fire to burn him, he wouldn't feel any heat. Therefore, after Jin Kuan ate a mouthful of the mapo tofu, besides feeling the scalding sensation, he also felt the majestic and rich true energy lingering around him. The last sensation gradually surged into his taste buds. Elder Sun, who had been observing Jin Kuan's expression, was slightly surprised when he saw Jin Kuan's face reveal an expression of enjoyment. It was because he knew how heavy the taste of the ferocious divine hall's master was. Seeing Jin Kuan's expression of enjoyment, Baijan, who had been observing him, couldn't help but want to take a bite. All of a sudden, Jin Kuan chewed for a while, and his expression froze. He suddenly opened his eyes and glared at Bufong. A wave of spiciness instantly enveloped his taste buds. It was as though he had fallen into a pool of boiling lava. His whole body started turning red at a speed visible to the naked eye. Of course, ordinary people wouldn't be able to tell that Jin Kuan's skin was turning red. Numerous beads of sweat appeared on his forehead in just a few breaths' time. Jin Kuan swallowed a mouthful of the tofu. He felt as though his throat was on fire after the mouthful entered his mouth. Jin Kuan couldn't help but spit out a faint sigh. He groaned, and his nostrils flared as he breathed out hot air. "Sir, how do you feel? Isn't it tasty enough?" When Elder Sun saw Jin Kuan's strange appearance, his heart trembled with fear as he asked hesitantly. Jin Kuan's head stiffened. He turned around with great difficulty and glared at Elder Sunday. He curled his lips, and his bald head became even brighter. "Not tasty enough? Give me a few more mouthfuls. You won't be able to taste this dish with just one mouthful. The more you taste it, the more tasty it becomes. Trust me, if it's not tasty enough, you can hit me," Bufong said earnestly. "Who?" Jin Kuan's nostrils flared, and he breathed out hot air as he glared at Bufong. "You. Not tasty enough. Fine, I'll eat it." Jin Kuan slapped the table. Sweat dripped down his face as he scooped up another spoonful of lightning mapo tofu. The throbbing lightning seemed as though it was beating against his heart. When he stuffed the tofu into his mouth, the spiciness immediately increased. It was as though waves were crashing against him. "Oh!" Jin Kuan squinted his eyes and blinked continuously. His entire face seemed to be distorted. It was hot and spicy. How could there be such a spicy taste in this world? Even the exploding chili peppers produced in the wildlands paled in comparison to this spiciness. "How is it? Sir, is it still not tasty enough?" Elder Sun asked excitedly. If it wasn't tasty enough, he would surely give the insufferably arrogant Bufong a good slap in the face. However, Jin Kuan didn't reply to him. Baijan licked his lips and grinned. It seemed like it was tasty enough. Jin Kuan's expression became distorted. "What? Not tasty enough? Give me another spoonful." Bufong continued asking. Jin Kuan didn't pay attention to Bufong at all. He just kept shaking his head. What the F***CK was going on? Elder Sun looked at Bufong, then looked at the abyssal chili sauce on the plate. He took a deep breath and scooped up a spoonful of the sauce and put it into his mouth. Bufong looked at him in astonishment. His gaze was filled with sympathy. This was the amount he had prepared for a supreme being. A spoonful of lightning mapo tofu entered his mouth. Elder Sun didn't have the same expression of enjoyment as Jin Kuan. He was dumbfounded, and the blue and white porcelain spoon in his hand fell on the table with a clang. He had a feeling that at this moment, he seemed to have taken off his clothes and was swimming in magma. His whole body was filled with a spicy taste. It was an indescribable spiciness. It was so spicy that it distorted his view of the world. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was seething with anger. His face was completely distorted. His face turned from white to red, from red to deep red, and from deep red to purple. Cough, cough. Elder Sun, who had forcefully swallowed the mapo tofu, lay on the ground and coughed. He covered his throat with his hands, and it seemed as though he was about to spit fire. "Water. A hoarse voice resounded in the midst of his dry coughs. Elder Son really wanted to slap himself in the face. Why did he join in the fun? He really wondered if he would die from the spiciness just like that. If that was the case, he would be the most miserable 8th grade war god in the world. He would be the first 8th grade war god to be killed by the spiciness of a chili. Jean Kuen's bald head was bright and shiny. He sniffed and deeply inhaled a breath of air before opening his eyes. His eyes were a little moist, and 2 streams of hot tears rolled down from his eyes. They streaked across his face, and it seemed as though they were about to evaporate. Bai Zhan and Zhan Kong were dumbstruck. The dignified supreme being of the ferocious temple, a supreme being who wouldn't shed a single tear even if he was cut by a saber, was actually crying. What kind of dish was this? A single dish could make a supreme being cry. Bufang was probably the only one who had such a dish. Jean Kuen's face was filled with despair. He felt as though his mouth was asking for it. Was it tasty enough? Was it tasty enough? It was so tasty that it made him doubt the existence of the world. He wondered if he was living in a fake world. Jean Kuen opened his mouth and waved his hands. He wanted to say something, but his throat was burning like a fire. He couldn't utter a single word. Tears flowed down from his eyes. He wanted to drink water. He wanted to drink a lot of water. Jean Kuen covered his swollen mouth, and tears streamed down his cheeks. Bufang curled up the corners of his mouth. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Let's talk about it. He held back his tears. Chapter 330. Elder Son knelt on the ground and held his throat. He felt as though he was about to spit out flames, and his mind was in a daze. In his eyes, the world seemed to have turned gloomy. Where am I? Where am I going? What am I going to do? Why are my lips so swollen? Elder Son felt as though his lips had swollen and were like 2 sausages. The burning sensation caused tears to well up in his eyes. What the F***CK? Jean Kuen was really crying. His tears couldn't stop flowing down from his eyes. He wanted to hold them back, but he was unable to do so. He covered his mouth and gasped for air. He furrowed his brows, which, along with his shiny bald head, appeared extremely comical. Zhan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Zhan Kong was dumbstruck. After a long while, Jean Kuen exhaled and raised his head. His nose was bright red, and there were still tears flickering in the corners of his eyes. Is it strong enough? Bufang couldn't help but ask when he saw Jean Kuen's comical appearance. Jean Kuen's body stiffened. He shot a glance at the lightning mapo tofu, which was placed on the table and had red lightning bolts flickering between them. His heart trembled. Is it strong enough? How strong do you want it to be? Is it only strong enough if I die from the spiciness? Jean Kuen ridiculed Bufang inwardly. However, his gaze was filled with fear as he looked at Bufang. Get up. Let's go back. Jean Kuen said to Elder Son, who was lying on the ground. Elder Son's eyes narrowed into slits. Bean-sized teardrops fell from his eyes like a bead curtain with a broken string. His lips were swollen, and they looked like 2 sausages hanging on the sides of his mouth. His eyes were misty, and his whole body was in a daze. Jean Kuen sucked in a breath of cold air when he saw this. Bufang was speechless as he shook his head. If you want to eat it, why didn't you say so earlier? If you didn't tell me, how would I know that you wanted to eat it? Bufang shook his head and sighed. The spoonful of abyssal chili sauce that was added to the mapo tofu was prepared for a supreme being. What was an 8th grade war god like him doing? If you wanted to eat it, you should have said so earlier. Jean Kuen took out crystals from his bosom and placed them on the table. He looked at Bufang with fear in his eyes. It turned out that a chef could be so terrifying. This dish had actually made a supreme being cry and almost killed an 8th grade war god. Do you have to be so strong? Although Bai Zhan was very curious about the taste of the lightning mapo tofu, when he recalled Jean Kuen's comical ending, he suppressed his curiosity. He turned his attention back to the dishes in front of him. The taste and aroma of the dishes were extremely rich, making him once again immersed in the dishes, unable to extricate himself. Jean Kuen left in a hurry. He carried the half-dead Elder Son and left the store. Bufong, on the other hand, stood at the door with a meaningful look, quietly watching the two of them leave. Bai Zhan ate for a long time. With his appetite as a supreme being expert, it wasn't a problem for him to finish all the dishes on the table. After he ate and drank to his heart's content, Bai Zhan, who hadn't tasted delicacies for a long time, rubbed his stomach in satisfaction and leaned back on the chair. He squinted his eyes, and his thick eyebrows twitched unceasingly. Delicious. I haven't eaten such delicious dishes in a long time. It's so satisfying. Great Commander, I said that Owner Bu's culinary skills are impeccable. Am I right? Zhang Kong asked with a smile. Bai Zhan nodded his head and sat up from his seat. After resting for a while, he turned his gaze toward Bufong. Although he had finished eating the dishes, he didn't forget about his proper business. Owner Bu, this lass's talent for cultivation is extremely high. If she were to work as a waitress in this store, she would be buried. Bai Zhan looked at Bufong, who was curled up on the chair, and said word by word. Bufong, who was lazily basking in the sun, heard Bai Zhan Kong's words and turned his head to look at him in confusion. What did you say? I said, Ouyang Xiaoi, if she were to work as a waitress in your store, she would be held back. Her talent is so good that she should find a good cultivation environment. In the future, she will surely become a supreme being expert who can look down upon the entire southern region. Bai Zhan stood up and said earnestly. He had seen Ouyang Xiaoi's talent. Such a genius naturally aroused his love for her, and he wanted to take her as his disciple. However, Ouyang Xiaoi was a waitress in this store. If she were an ordinary store's waitress, he would have taken her away long ago. He wouldn't have asked her so seriously. Only Bufong's mysterious store could make a supreme being expert like him feel apprehensive. Oh, you want to take Xiaoi as your disciple? Why don't you ask for yourself? Bufong looked at Bai Zhan in astonishment. He curled up the corners of his mouth and pointed at Ouyang Xiaoi. Bai Zhan's eyes lit up. Bufong wouldn't hinder him from taking Ouyang Xiaoi away. That was great. It turned out that Owner Bu was such an open-minded person. With this, he would soon be able to nurture a supreme being expert. Bai Zhan clenched his fists and turned his head to look at Ouyang Xiaoi, who was mischievously sitting beside the path understanding tree. However, contrary to his expectations, Ouyang Xiaoi's reaction completely exceeded his expectations when he expressed his desire to take her as his disciple. The little girl squinted her cute eyes and raised her head. She looked at the thick-browed Bai Zhan. She earnestly asked, Are you able to defeat Blackie? Who is Blackie? Bai Zhan was startled. What kind of expert was Blackie? Zhang Kong, who was standing behind Bai Zhan, was startled. When he heard the name Blackie, he subconsciously looked at the big black dog that was snoring at the entrance. Little girl, you don't know who I am. I don't care who you are. Are you able to defeat Blackie? Ouyang Xiaoi interrupted him. Bai Zhan stiffened and his complexion became unsightly. This little girl actually dared to look down on him. Who was he? He was the commander of the White Cloud Villa, a dignified supreme being expert. Even in the southern region, he was an invincible expert. Who is that Blackie? This commander will go and defeat him. Little girl, your innate talent shouldn't be wasted. Becoming my disciple is the right path. Bai Zhan's complexion became serious. He stood up and spoke in a heroic manner. The muscles on Zhang Kong's face twitched. The corners of Bufong's mouth twitched. He curled up in his chair and was shocked by Bai Zhan's heroic words. Ouyang Xiaoi wore a strange expression on her face. She blinked her big eyes and tilted her head as she looked at Bai Zhan. Tell me, who is Blackie? Bai Zhan looked at her disdainfully. Then, Ouyang Xiaoi stretched out her fair and slender fingers and pointed toward the outside of the store. Bai Zhan furrowed his thick brows and looked in the direction Ouyang Xiaoi was pointing. It was a dog. It was a fat black dog that was snoring at the entrance. So Blackie wasn't a human? Was it a dog? Bai Zhan was stupefied for a long time. Then, he became furious, as if there was a flame burning in his heart. Something is wrong. This little girl is looking down on me? She thinks that this commander can't defeat a dog? Ouyang Xiaoi rolled her eyes at Bai Zhan. Zhang Kong coughed and whispered behind Bai Zhan that Commander, Blackie is actually the supreme being beast in the store. Baijan's body stiffened, and he was taken aback. Supreme beast. That dog? The supreme dog that killed the Shura sect venerable? In the vast border city, the Black Tower stood loftily. A whistling sound tore through the air, and a series of sonic booms resounded. A blood guard, who was sitting cross-legged beside the Black Tower, suddenly opened his eyes. There seemed to be a flickering light in his eyes. When he saw the meteor-like beam of light approaching from outside the border city, he made his move. With a long whistle, his body shot up from his seat. Blood-colored, true energy surged out of his body. He raised his hand and tried to grab the beam of light. When his palm collided with the energy wave, a wave of energy surged out. The enormous force forced the blood guard to retreat. The expression on his face changed. Bang! An even more enormous pressure burst out from the Black Tower. Then a beautiful figure swaying in the wind stepped out. Her small feet were extremely cute. Her sparkling toes were like white jade. As she stepped in the air, they created a series of ripples. The high priestess wore an undergarment and a mask. She waved her hand in the air and walked toward the blood guard. She waved her hand and stopped the blood guard's movement. Her slender fingers curved and flicked, immediately hitting the stream of light. The light on the stream of light blossomed and burst forth, and the spiritual fluctuation dissipated with a loud rumble. Then, the object within the beam of light appeared. It was a grayish-white bead. It was covered with strange patterns. The high priestess' chest, which was covered by her undergarment, heaved up and down. She grabbed the white bead and softly murmured. Her voice was solemn and sorrowful. The departed soul orb is back, but the venerable will never come back. Venerable, don't worry. The Shura sect will definitely avenge you. The sovereign will definitely kill your enemy with his own hands. Chapter 331. The high priestess held the departed soul orb that was floating above her palm. She looked at the hazy luster emitted by the departed soul orb. Her eyes, which were hidden under the mask, flickered with a sorrowful radiance. Her voice was solemn and dignified. It resounded in the sky and caused people's hearts to tremble. When the blood guard, who was sent flying by the departed soul orb, heard the high priestess' words, his pupils constricted and he sucked in a breath of cold air. He looked at the high priestess in disbelief. What? What did the high priestess say? The venerable was dead? How is this possible? The venerable was so powerful. How could he die? Guard the sacred tower well. Soon, we will leave the border city and revive the Shura sect. At that time, the Shura sect will definitely avenge the venerable. The high priestess' faint voice resounded. Then she stepped on the air with her jade-like feet. She carried the departed soul orb and, accompanied by ripples, entered the Black Tower. The blood guard stared at the Black Tower and sucked in a deep breath. The most frightening thing was that the air suddenly became silent. At this moment, Baijan had this kind of feeling. He felt an indescribable sense of awkwardness. Bufang looked at him with a faint smile. Ouyang Xiaoi tilted her head, and Zhang Kong turned his head away. The store was extremely quiet. Only the sound of their breathing could be heard. Baijan's face gradually turned red as he thought to himself, "Can you defeat Blackie?" These words lingered in his mind. Could he defeat Blackie? How was he supposed to fight? That was a supreme beast that could kill a 9th grade supreme being expert. Although he was also a supreme being, he was only evenly matched with the Shura sect venerable. It was impossible for him to kill it. Since this supreme beast could kill a venerable, it was undoubtedly capable of killing him as well. Could he defeat Blackie? Perhaps he couldn't beat them. Cough, cough. Girl, the Lord Go is a spirit beast. He doesn't know how to teach you. I am from the White Cloud Villa. Since you can't defeat Blackie, why should I be your disciple? Ouyang Xiaoi rolled her eyes again and said mercilessly. At this moment, Baijan felt as if he was about to cry like Jean Cohen. Countless people would cry for him to become their master. However, he was actually crying and begging this lowly to become his disciple. Why was there such a huge gap between people? I'm doing quite well at Ownerbu's place. I don't need your guidance. In the end, Ouyang Xiaoyi told Baijian her thoughts. Baijian looked at Bufang, then looked at Ouyang Xiaoyi. His expression was somewhat complicated, and his thick eyebrows were knitted together. All right, since Xiao, he doesn't want to be your disciple, you can leave first. Bufang finally stood up from his chair and walked over to Baijian as he calmly said. Baijian still wanted to say something, but Bufang didn't listen to him. He just patted Ouyang Xiaoyi's head and went back to the kitchen. Baijian was somewhat unwilling and didn't want to leave so easily. After hesitating for a while, he didn't know what to do. If he was asked to fight with that supreme beast, he definitely wouldn't be able to defeat it. In the end, he could only put down the crystals and leave with Zhang Kong. Although he was unwilling, he was also helpless. After Baijian left the store, the solemn and earnest voice of the system resounded in Bufang's mind. Congratulations to the host for completing the short-term mission. The system has been upgraded. The reward has been issued. Bufang was startled and the corners of his mouth curled up. It turned out that the 2 meals he had just eaten were enough for him to obtain the system's upgrade. Every time the system upgraded, Bufang's cultivation would rise. Bufang's consciousness entered his body and he started to look at the system panel. Host, Bufang True Energy Cultivation Level, 7th grade. As a man who wants to become the god of cooking at the top of the food chain in this fantasy world, the host's future path will be even more arduous and difficult. Work hard, young man. Cooking talent, 3-star skills. Level 2 meteor cutting technique, 100 out of 100. Level 2 big dipper carving technique, 80 out of 100 tools. Golden dragon bone kitchen knife, god of cooking set. Black turtle constellation wok, god of cooking set. God of cooking overall rating. Intermediate chef, your culinary skills have improved. You have finally become a chef who can take charge of a task. Your cutting and carving techniques have also reached a higher level. The path to becoming the god of cooking has opened for you. System level, 7 stars. Conversion ratio is at 100%. System reward. Mortal grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup recipe, a fragment of the god of cooking set. 1/3. As expected, there was a huge change on the system panel. Bufang's true energy cultivation level had reached the 7th grade Battle Saint realm. After holding back for so long, he had finally made a breakthrough. His culinary talent had also reached 3 stars. He felt as if his mind had become much clearer, and many of the doubts he had about culinary skills were suddenly cleared up. Many of his questions were easily solved. Intermediate chef. Bufang narrowed his eyes. He was quite interested in this title. However, what excited him the most wasn't this. Instead, it was the upgrade of the system level. As of now, his system level had reached 7 stars, and the conversion ratio was at 100%. 100%. Bufang's eyes lit up. This 100% meant that all the sales from his turnover would be converted into his true energy cultivation level. This was definitely a piece of news that made him excited. Owner Bu, Xiao Xiaolong, looked at Bufang, who was standing at the entrance of the kitchen in a daze. His eyes were blank, and no one knew what he was thinking about. The lips on his paralyzed face curled up, forming a strange smile. That smile sent chills down Xiao Xiaolong's spine. It was a really scary feeling. Bufang came back to his senses. His gaze landed on Xiao Xiaolong as he calmly said, "Today's business hours are over. Today's business hours are over. Go back and rest early." Xiao Xiaolong was dumbfounded. Today, he actually didn't need to stay to practice his cutting and carving skills. Since Bufang told him to go back and rest, he didn't ask any more questions. He was still worried about his father's injuries. It would be better for him to go back early. Thus, he said goodbye to Bufang and left the store with Ouyang Xiaoyi. After the two left, Bufang waited until the business hours were over before closing the door. He couldn't wait to experience the different feeling of leveling up. After reaching 7th grade Battle Saint, Bufang's body seemed to have a strange feeling of power. He had only felt this from Battle Saints like Xiaoming. Even though Bufang didn't focus on cultivating martial skills, he could feel his fleshly body becoming stronger. The The system helped him increase his cultivation level. While increasing his true energy cultivation level, it also raised his fleshly body to 7th grade battle saint. This wasn't normal. With a strong, fleshly body, Bufang could use the meteor cutting technique more easily. Moreover, Bufang had a premonition that his cutting technique would soon change. Because as his cultivation level and cooking talent increased, he could clearly feel that the second level of the meteor cutting technique could no longer satisfy his skills and standards. This time, the system's reward is still a dish and a fragment of the God of Cooking set. As expected, the Dragon Bone kitchen knife and the Black Turtle constellation wok are not the only parts of the God of Cooking set, Bufang thought to himself. Then, he focused his attention on the new dish. Bufang was very familiar with this dish. Its name was also very famous. The Buddha jumps over the wall soup was a famous dish in his previous life. System, why does the Buddha jumps over the wall soup depend on the quality of the character? Bufang asked the system in puzzlement. The Buddha jumps over the wall soup is divided into the mortal grade and the heaven grade. The ingredients used to cook the Buddha jumps over the wall soup have a strict requirement, and the ingredients used to cook it are different, the system said. Bufang pondered for a while and understood. It was obvious that the mortal grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup should be of a lower grade, and the ingredients used to cook it should be of a lower grade as well. As for the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup, with his current level, it was impossible for him to cook it. This was somewhat interesting. It turned out that the Buddha jumps over the wall soup had different grades. Bufang was quite interested in it. After closing the door, Bufang returned to the kitchen. After his cooking talent had increased, he cooked several dishes. The taste and texture of the dishes were actually raised to another level, which was beyond his expectations. Moreover, when he used the meteor cutting technique, it was simply as smooth as flowing water. It was as easy as eating and drinking. The improvement of his cooking talent was something that made Bufang the happiest. After practicing for a while, Bufang returned to his room. After taking a hot shower, he walked out of the bathroom with a head full of wet hair. The system's voice resounded in his mind once again. Temporary mission. Obtain the 10,000 bestial flames. Will begin in 3 days. The location of the 10,000 bestial flames' appearance will be posted in the host's gourmet map. Host, please prepare to obtain the 10,000 bestial flames' flame in your best condition. The location of the 10,000 bestial flames' flame is the 100,000 mountains. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.